Hello, dear viewers. Support me by subscribing to my channel and share my video if you like it. And also, make sure you comment your thoughts. Now let's start the video.
This was all part of Fu's plan. He watched with a smile on his face as Boo stretched out his arm and turned his hand into a cocoon that slowly grew bigger and bigger until it reached the size of an adult Namekian. Gathering the negative energy from the evil beings he absorbed recently, the pink Maijin filled the pod that contained Slug's body to the brim. If a Namekian can become a Namekian god by overcoming all the darkness in their hearts, then I wonder what would happen if I managed to remove those pesky roots of good in Slug's heart. Yin must have yang, so the opposite should be true as well. Will I get an evil Namekian god? Fu pondered. As the purplish-grey smoke slammed into Slug's body, it surged throughout his soul, searching for the last vestige of light inside him. After a few minutes, the negative energy that was hell-bent on wiping out any traces of light found its intended target. The only vestige of Slug's positivity, the memories of his kin. Even though he was exiled from his planet, the Super Namekian still loved his fellow brethren and respected his fellow Namekians. Once the negative energy found the last bit of positive energy, it weeded it out, causing a pitch-black smoke to surround Slug's cocoon. Quickly, release him, Fu ordered Boo. Boo looked reluctant, but under Fu's thrall, he could do nothing but follow orders. Slug came flying out of Boo's body before something at the center of the black smoke suddenly pulsated. A powerful heartbeat that felt like it could swallow all of existence abruptly echoed out from within the smoke. Place a Majin seal on him now, Fu ordered. As the seal landed against Slug's body, the negative energy was magnified by the spell and began surging like crazy. The M marking on his forehead then suddenly faded away like it was eaten by something. Without warning, a black shadow dragon wrapped around the smoke and roared into the sky. The smoke was then suddenly and abruptly pulled into Slug's body. It only took a second for transformation to complete itself. The 6'3" Namekian with very dark green skin appeared from out the fog, floating just a few feet away from them. Zu smiled and cast his own thrall spell. Ha, now I have a Namekian demon. That's definitely demonic ki that I sense. The demonic dragon. Quick, can you tell me if you can make shadow dragon balls? Now returned to his prime and stronger than ever before. Slug bowed to Fu and said, "Yes, master, but I lost my ability to make the stones needed for the Dragon Balls. If I had the materials, I could still make a set." "How can we get the materials?" Fu asked. "We could wish for some, or we could steal an existing set," Slug answered. No, I still need to lay low. There is someone that even I dare not attract the attention of, the Grand Priest." Fu ground his teeth at the thought of the angelic father. No matter how strong he was, with the Grand Priest around, his plans for absolute chaos were bound to fail. Not to mention, he's too powerful, not even the Omni King can kill him. If he caught on to Fu's schemes, then all his plans would go up in smoke. Normally, the Angles can't intervene in mortal affairs. However, if a being attempts to do what Fu has planned, then the odds are they'll have no choice but to attack. Slug raised his concerns. "Then, how will we be able to make a set of—" Fufu raised his hand up, interrupting the Namekian before saying, "We won't steal them. I know of a set of Dragon Balls that have already become Black Star Dragon Balls. Unlike the GT universe, Black Star's Dragon's Balls weren't made as Black Star Dragon Balls. The stars of normal Dragon Balls become Black Stars over time. Once they turn completely black, the Dragon Balls hit the limit of being able to hold in the negative energy from the wishes made on them. If a wish is made from this point on, the planet belonging to the one making the wishes self-destructs and scatters the Black Star Dragon Balls across the universe. This failsafe was set up to prevent the birth of a shadow dragon. Fu then teleported them to the past of a planet that dared to use the Black Star Dragon Balls. As he watched the explosion of the planet, Fu waved his hands, collecting the 7 Black Star Dragon Balls with his ki. The black stars showed signs of breaking. They had cracks throughout them and were leaking negative energy like a dam about to burst. Fu then passed them over to Slug and said, "So, will this be enough for you to use?" Slug smiled and said, Even better, these are so full of negative energy that the shadow dragon produced from it will be several times stronger than if I were to use raw materials. I will also be able to extract the 7 dragons of sin from them to become my slaves and the Dragon Balls to become usable. Fool grinned, "You mean my slaves? But won't that offset the powers of shadow dragons?" "No, they are simply the evils brought forth by the ones who made the wishes. The shadow dragon is its own entity. It does not need them, and can even grow stronger by having the dragons of sin to spread their calamities," Slug explained. Fu nodded his head and said, "Oh, looks like Janemba found Goku and Vegeta. Ha ha ha. As the 2 strongest in the universe, Janemba obviously won't allow such a threat to his existence to survive." Fu gathered up Boo and Slug before announcing, "Time's running out. The laws of the afterlife breaking will only grant me a brief moment to act without being noticed by those pesky gods. We have one last person to nab, and Boo, this is the Saiyan I want you to absorb the most. His name." Back on Earth, Vegeta and Goku met up to discover the fearsome power growing in the afterlife. Goku went on ahead while Vegeta flew off. He had to drop off some luggage before he could follow after his fellow Saiyan. Vegeta had already teleported the Grand Supreme Kai at the Celestial World and then left Fat Boo off on Earth with someone he could trust. He flew across the world and smiled at how much his changes affected this universe. Even in such a dangerous situation, Earth was safe without them. He landed in Central City and took the Margin to Satan and told him to take care of Fat Boo. "Also teach him about manners and how to behave," Vegeta requested. Fat Boo right now was an extremely pure being. He could even ride the Nimbus without falling through. He needed proper guidance, and Vegeta thought that if Hercule could do it before, he could do it again. "I don't understand, Mr. Vegeta. If this guy is so powerful, how could I help?" Satan said with nervous sweat dripping down his face. "I don't know. Get him a dog and have him raise it or something. Teach him about life and the importance of it," Vegeta said, throwing him a bone. If Hercule took this advice, it might actually make a difference. This guy has a lot of potential to be a great fighter someday. I imagine he'll become very strong in the future. However, that doesn't mean he's weak or anything. At the moment, he could destroy a whole galaxy if he wanted to. Vegeta added, "Yeah, but what does that have to do with me?" Hercule asked on the verge of crying. "Somehow, against all odds, you did a pretty good job raising Vidal to be a virtuous and pure person at heart. I think you are actually a good parental figure. So raise Boo like a little brother, or your own child. I don't care. He's your responsibility now." Vegeta started to fly away. "Oh, and when he wakes up, make sure to tell him that he can't turn people into candy. Earth already has a lot of good candy, and eating people is wrong." With that said, Vegeta teleported off towards the powerful energy growing in the afterlife. "Eat people," Hercule gulped as he stared at the unconscious Fat Boo. "Oh man, what am I gonna do?" Vegeta transported himself to the afterlife and saw Goku beating up a fat Janemba in regular Super Saiyan form. He was grabbing its antenna and kicking his head like a paddleball. The large baby Janemba cried out as Vegeta flew over. Suddenly, black smoke surrounded it as the energy released from Janemba pushed Goku back. The afterlife began quaking as the screech grew louder and more high-pitched. Suddenly, all the negative energy in the afterlife converged on Janemba's body. The massive tornado of evil ki that resembled a hurricane of epic proportion circled around him while his power continued to soar to new heights. Suddenly, the tornado of negative energy turned into a whirlpool before it was all sucked inside of Janemba's new body. Janemba's body condensed down to the size of a muscular and tall humanoid. He stood at 5 feet 11 inches. His skin and long pointed tail were blood red. He had a tinted yellow filled the sclera, demonic-looking red irises, and vertical black pupils. His upper torso was covered in a dull purple-colored set of flexible armor that was actually part of his own body. 2 dull purple curved horns appeared out of his helmet-like skin, along with wristlets, pelvic armor, and ankle supports. Super Janemba was born. Both Vegeta and Goku weren't scared, nor were they impressed. Both of them could sense the depth of Janemba's strength, and both of them were rather disappointed. "I almost wish that Fugai would show up," Goku said, thinking back to his fight with Majin Osato. "Man, now that guy was strong. Shame about the personality, though." Janemba grinned at them as he summoned his sword. "Vegeta, can I fight him?" Goku asked. "Knock yourself out." "Kakarot, knowing how you fight, you'll only make him stronger for me to fight after you lose," Vegeta said with a grin on his face. "Whatever, I won't lose, I'll show you." Goku powered up to the limit of his Super Saiyan 1 form and charged towards Janemba. "This is more than enough to take care of this guy." Vegeta shook his head as he thought, Goku was always a slow starter. Maybe it can work out in my favor for a change. The pure-hearted Saiyan fought face-to-face with Super Janemba and barely broke a sweat. It was sword against a single finger. Goku deflected all of Janemba's attacks while saying things like, "Is that the best you can do? Come on, I know you can do better." Janemba started to get angry. The negative energy inside him started to grow rapidly, and because of his nature, bit by bit, Janemba was getting stronger. Unfortunately, this only seemed to excite Goku as he egged on his opponent more. Vegeta could swear he saw Goku's eyes sparkling. After a few minutes of toying with the manifestation of evil, Janemba's power started to reach Goku's. In response to the growth of the monster, Goku instantly transformed into Super Saiyan 2 and said, "All right, now we're warming up. Come on, let's see how far you can get me to go." Janemba shook as he felt the power of Goku's mastered Super Saiyan 2 form wash over him. His face contorted in anger as he shouted like an angered monkey. The power of the negative being suddenly underwent a transformation. Janemba started to pull in the negative energy from every wicked soul in the afterlife. The reach of his pull stretched out into the southern, eastern, western, and northern Kai's territories as he began plundering their negativity like a kid looking for candy. Once the afterlife was almost entirely stripped of its negative energy, it began throwing the universe out of balance. Even though his power was still increasing like crazy, Vegeta and Goku were confident they could handle Janemba, regardless of the creature's newfound power. However, a certain demon with a thirst for chaos suddenly appeared and said, "You know what the coolest thing about Babidi's spell is?" Vegeta's eyes widened as he saw Kid Buu, who looked more like a teen Buu now. His entire body back into his simple form. No biocrystals, no costumes or physical alterations, no sign that he had absorbed anything at all. This was evidence that Bertuo had completely absorbed his victims. Unlike what Super Buu showed in the original content, this Buddha had absorbed everything. All of their intelligence, talent, power, and techniques were perfectly fused with Buu's body. Everything was absorbed, not even their clothes remained. Fu continued his rant, and spoke as he had. Majin Buu snap his fingers. "The coolest thing about Babidi's Majin spell is that it can magnify negative energy to ungodly levels." The Majin symbol appeared on Janemba's forehead. Responding to the marking, the negative energy inside his body suddenly skyrocketed. Pitch-black smoke shot out of Janemba's body and flooded the entire universe with negativity. The balance that shifted towards the positive earlier was now overflowing with negativity. Souls and beings from the afterlife were all being corrupted by Janemba's transformation, while maniacal laughter could be heard coming from the epicenter of the negative energy cloud. Fu smiled and said, "Weaken him so I can cast my control method on him." Bu nodded his head, and for a second all of Janemba's power vanished. The balance between positive and negative was restored. However, the very next second, the M marking was absorbed into Janemba's body. The mass of negative energy that engulfed the universe reshaped Janemba's body. First, his skin turned into a dark gray color. His armor shined like black steel, and two very small white lines ran down the center of his eyes that stopped at the bottom of his chin. His horns curved in slightly, giving him a more devil-like appearance. His sclera turned pitch black, and his red irises shone like rubies that were on fire. Janemba then roared. His voice carried a shockwave that rocked the entire universe, and afterlife. The vibrations alone threatened to destroy the very fabric of reality. Vegeta and Goku frowned. Neither of them was expecting such a huge leap in power from their opponent. They both transformed into their true Super Saiyan God Green forms and charged towards Janemba with all of their strength. Fuel was surprised to see the Saiyan's new form. He then grinned with an excited expression before saying, "Wait until Goku and Vegeta have had their fun. When it starts to look bad for Janemba, take your chance to absorb him and become the ultimate Janemba." Vegeta and Goku both pushed their ki to the limits and worked together to attack Janemba. The two Saiyans appeared in front of the negative energy devil in a flash of intense speed. Surprised by their sudden jolt in power, Janemba let his guard down. Vegeta punched him in the face with an attack so fast it manifested lightning around his arm. At the same time, Goku kicked him in the gut with a spinning motion that sent out a tornado of wind and ki strong enough to destroy an entire universe. Janemba's body was flung back through the air like a lifeless corpse in the wind. The two chased after him and continued their assault. Vegeta kicked him in the back of the head at the same time. Goku punched his face. The collision made the monster scream in pain before both Goku and Vegeta kicked Janemba on both sides of his shoulders, sending the manifestation of evil crashing back into the ground. Janemba roared in anger as his aura destroyed the rubble around him. He then raised his hand and recreated his sword. This time the blade was pitch black with a white handle. Janemba swung his sword, causing the space in front of himself to be cut. In an instant, a blade beam shot out of a spatial opening that appeared beneath the feet of the two Saiyans. Vegeta and Goku evaded with an instant transmission and appeared beside Janemba while throwing out their next attacks. Vegeta proceeded to hit Janemba in the gut with a spinning knee kick while Goku performed a front flip heel kick to the back of Janemba's skull. Janemba's body flew into the distance once again, only stopping when it crashed into the strange stone exterior of the afterlife's ground. However, this time, Goku and Vegeta powered up their attacks. "Super Spiral Kamehameha!" Goku shouted as he launched his beam down at Janemba's location. "Final Flare!" Vegeta roared as he infused both fire and explosive spells into his attack. Janemba roared, causing his black aura to kick up all the debris around him in a massive explosion. At the last second, he cut open a hole in space and leapt through, narrowly avoiding the combined beam attack. Janemba appeared behind them and tried to cut their backs open. However, Goku spun around and hit the manifestation of evil in the gut with two rapid punches. At the same time, Vegeta stomp-kicked the top of Janemba's head and front-flipped off of him before stopping, spinning around and kicking the side of the monster. That light skirmish was all it took for Vegeta and Goku to wound Janemba. Fu stared at them suspiciously and thought, "Odd, this new form is powerful indeed, but there is something off about their ki." Fu hadn't realized it yet, but the strangeness he sensed coming from their ki was because it was no longer regular God ki. The origin ki center they've formed has changed the nature of energy they used as gods. What they were using was something even greater than the Kais or pseudo-god ki transformations brought about. Only someone like Beerus directly connected to one of the great laws could compete with them. Fueling their new transformations was what Vegeta dubbed godly origin ki. This made them countless times stronger than if they were using plain God ki. It was like comparing liquid to a solid in terms of density, durability, and energy. Vegeta and Goku weren't just defeating the villain, they were dominating Janemba. Janemba was constantly gaining strength due to the negative energy inside him being stimulated by his current emotions. However, Vegeta and Goku still maintained a solid lead. No matter how much power he gained, it never seemed to be enough. This was because their true Super Saiyan God Green forms were constantly gaining more power. Each time Janemba got stronger, Vegeta and Goku grew faster and more powerful than their opponent. Both Goku and Vegeta could feel their base forms constant, absorbing the additional power generated by their true Super Saiyan God Green form. And as a result, that new power was magnified by their Super Saiyan God Green's massive multiplier. A mastered Super Saiyan 1 has a 75 times modifier, MSS2 has a 200 times modifier, MSS3 has a 1000 times modifier, and both of their SS4 forms have a 25,000 times modifier. Stacking Mastered Primal Super Saiyan on top of that gives them a 50 times boost to their highest achieved Super Saiyan modifier. Just as Primal Super Saiyans, both Goku and Vegeta can multiply their base power by 1.25 million times. TSSGR transforms all their ki into the most basic form of God Ki, making them 1,000 times stronger. Using the 1.25 million multipliers of their Primal Super Saiyan forms as their base, the higher form of ki magnifies that boost to 1.25 billion times their base forms. Then the cycle repeats, but instead of advancing through the stages of Super Saiyan to increase their multiplier, it becomes about accessing higher tiers of God Ki. Mastered TSSGB Godly Ki is 75 times stronger than TSSGR's, giving them a 93.75 billion times modifier. On top of having a more powerful form of God Ki, it came with unique effects. This form made Ki control easier and granted more powerful Ki attacks. Mastered TSSGP is twice as strong as TSSGB, making their base power modifier 2050 billion. The side effect of this one was that the purple God Ki brought out the full potential of the physiques, strength, speed, dexterity, and even muscles density. All of it was brought out to the absolute limit without destroying the balance within the body's physical parameters. Once mastered, this form practically drains no stamina and can be maintained almost indefinitely. And now their latest form, Mastered TSSGG's God Ki, was 1,000 times stronger than Purple God Ki, giving them a boost of 1.25 trillion times to their base power. The side effect of this one was to tap into the pure power of their Saiyan genetics. Essentially, it was a legendary Super Saiyan in God form. While they fight, they grow stronger. If they take damage, they get stronger. Energy spills out from their magnified form while their base forms absorb the energy. The longer they fought, the more energy from TSSGG constantly leaked into their base forms. The higher their base power became, the greater boost they would receive from their true Super Saiyan God Green modifier. This isn't right, it should be more fun than this. Slug, help me and unleash his dark potential. Bill, get ready to make your move, Fu said, as he watched Vegeta and Goku wailing against Janemba. Janemba suddenly shouted wildly as Vegeta's fist punched a hole through his chest. Goku's jumped in next with a kick so sharp, Janemba's legs were cut off at the knees. As Janemba's body flew backward, he was surrounded by a pitch-black smoke that suddenly increased his strength several folds. The evil Super Namekian, Slug, was using his Dragon Sage magic to bring out the power of darkness inside Janemba. The black smoke abruptly engulfed Janemba, roared out with incredible power. Before they could even sense the change inside Janemba, a random sword beam struck out and cut Goku across the chest. Blood sprayed out of Goku's body as a 9-inch gash appeared across his sternum. Vegeta grabbed Goku's falling body and felt a chill spread across his spine. He quickly teleported away. However, the moment Vegeta reappeared, a portal appeared next to his neck. A crimson-red sword beam flew through Janemba's portal and threatened to steal Vegeta's life. Vegeta tilted his head at the last second and felt the sword beam cleave off a piece of his ear. Letting out a grunt as he teleported again, Vegeta began to try and get some distance. No matter how much he tried, each time Vegeta moved away, Janemba would open a portal next to him and slash out, attempting to take his life with lethal accuracy. Every time the sword beam would appear to claim his life, Vegeta would dodge by the narrowest of margins. Vegeta cast his auto-heal spell on both himself and Goku, and while they regenerated the damage, both of them had to avoid life-threatening attacks. Sword beams flew all throughout the afterlife, cutting through dimensions and destroying celestial constructs that belonged to the Kais themselves. After a few minutes of this, Vegeta and Goku were covered in blood, worn out and starting to lose stamina. As they continued to flee, Vegeta shouted, "Damn it! How much stronger did he get?" as he suddenly used a warp spell. In an instant, Goku and Vegeta appeared on King Kai's planet. King Kai looked at the two with a pensive stare. "Why, do you have a grudge against me or something?" The two looked at one another and then to King Kai with an apologetic one. "Sorry, King Kai. We needed to get away for a bit, Goku said while rubbing the back of his head with a silly look on his face. What are you doing? What if that freak comes here looking for you? King Kai was panicking. Vegeta smiled and said, Let him come. Are you ready, Kakarot? Goku nodded his head and said, Let's fuse and beat this guy already. The two stood a distance away from each other and began to perform the fusion dance that took them a full minute to complete. Full! Saiyan!
Hapsai.
With a universe-quaking eruption, a huge burst of Origin King came spilling out from King Kai's home. Needless to say, the sudden appearance of such power notified everyone who was looking in on this fight. Several Kais gasped in astonishment. Shin, Kibito, and Elder Kai all sat around a crystal ball with open jaws. Every last warrior and capable soul able to sense the rising power of the fusion couldn't believe how powerful a being Vegeta was. As the fusion finished, a portal appeared above the small planet. Janemba was about to walk through the portal when a bright azure green beam suddenly shot forward and kicked him back through it. Vegeta floated in the air with a cocky smile on his face. He gave King Kai a smile before speaking with his usual confidence. No worries, King Kai. I won't let him destroy your planet. Now let me go take care of this guy real quick. King Kai shook his head. Just go already. After Gogeta left, King Kai looked around and saw that the gust from Gogeta's attack completely wrecked his car and house. My baby, King Kai shouted as he ran to his car and fell to his knees in tears. Gogeta teleported back to the place where they were previously fighting. At the same time, the fused Saiyan saw Janemba suddenly falling out of his own portal that he had kicked him through. The manifestation of negative energy flew down and slammed into the ground like a meteor. Before Fu could question what happened, Gogeta's power suddenly flooded the entire afterlife. In his Super Saiyan God Green form, Gogeta had truly become the ultimate fusion. Ha ha ha! It's here! He's here! Fu shouted. His eyes sparkled as he saw Gogeta standing a few feet away from Janemba. With an ever-present smile on his face, Fu clapped his hands a few times as he said, It's Gogeta! I'm such a big fan. What power! I've never heard of such a powerful Saiyan before. Who is this master? Slug questioned. Gogeta is the fusion between those two fellows that was fighting with Janemba earlier, Fua answered. Fusion? Slug showed a surprised expression before saying, I never thought that such a skill was possible for non-Namekians. Shh, you'll miss it. Fu pointed to Gogeta, beating the tar out of his opponent. Janemba didn't stand a chance. Hit by Gogeta's furious light-speed blows, his body looked like steel that was being dented in by a hammer. Hundreds of impressions in the shape of Gogeta's fist appeared on Janemba's body, one after the other. Gogeta didn't show the slightest bit of mercy. After hitting Janemba over 1,000 times, Gogeta backflipped away while kicking Janemba in the chin. As Gogeta landed, he raised his arm to prepare a stardust breaker. That's when Fu laughed as he shouted, Now Boo, now's your chance. The small Boo fragment that was left in the afterlife finally made his move. Without being able to react, Janemba was swallowed up by the pink blob before taking off in Fu's direction. In his weakened state, Janemba couldn't even move, much less fend off someone as strong as. While he tried to escape the trap, Fu opened a portal and had Janemba fall through it. Boo appeared in front of Fuki's portal exit while the copy Boos slammed into Boo's main body. It only took a few seconds for Boo to completely absorb Janemba into his body and begin processing his power. Fu then smiled as he saw Gogeta suddenly throw the Stardust Breaker at them. That won't work. Fu's words were cut short. He could sense impending doom coming from that attack. He tried to close the portal he made, but it was too late. The Stardust Breaker passed through Fu's portal and slammed into Boo, making the pink Majin suddenly cry out in pain. It was like holy water being splashed in a biblical demon's face. The cleansing energy of the Stardust Breaker was the bane of all things evil, capable of destroying the smallest speck of darkness in a person's body or soul, and at the moment, Majin Buu was nothing but negative energy. The Stardust Breaker exploded on Majin Buu, causing the pink demon to shriek and wail in pain. Fu growled as he quickly grabbed Bu and cut open a portal back to his base. After jumping through, Fu looked back and said, "Damn it! This isn't over, Vegeta." They ended up in a place called Purgatory. It was a realm that existed between the dimensions. Fu discovered it by accident when tried to spy on the god of time. He was waiting for his chance to steal the time scrolls of this universe while testing out his augmented invisible spell. When finally completed the phase-out spell, his body slipped out of reality and into this purgatory by accident. In the original timeline that Fu would have belonged to, it was this place where he would have started to build his prison world. According to DBH, Purgatory was a place where the gods and angels can't enter or interfere with. However, this time he had different plans. Plans that Fu kept to himself. No one, not even his slaves, knew his true purpose or desires. Purgatory was a strange and quiet realm. Withered trees grew along a desolate crimson wasteland. Pointed mountains and jagged stones glowed like lights and could be seen everywhere. Black clouds floated on a green sky, and large bodies of neon blue water flowed like oceans. Fu's castle was the only place that seemed to resemble civilization. There was lush red grass, blue bushes and trees, strange fruits and several demonic species. Mira and Towa were included amongst the crowd as well, but just like everyone else, they seemed to be under Fu's dark throw spell. Everything seemed normal, right up until a large portal opened up over the castle's courtyard, and the power of Gogeta's Stardust Breaker detonating rippled throughout his realm, causing many demons and devils to become purified. They started to think evil things they've done were wrong, and started fighting amongst their own kind. Just the background radiation from Gogeta's Stardust Breaker was cleansing the souls of the demonic beings. At the same time, the one who was hit with Gogeta's attack came tumbling down alongside Fu. The Demon King quickly closed off his portal while Boots struggled to maintain his shape. At the moment, Boots' body was constantly splitting between a semi-pile of pink goop and the Janimbu form. The massive pink blob struggled to maintain a solid form. The Majin cried out in profound agony while he slammed his head into the ground to alleviate said pain. Fu looked around and saw that the people under his thrall waging war on each other. No, not now, not here. Fu suddenly raised his hands and started to cast a powerful spell. The world turned grey as everyone in Purgatory froze in place. Everything seemed to be under control. Only something occurred outside Fu's predictions. Both Mira and Towa seemed to have escaped his spell and fled. Due to Gogeta's interference, those under Fu's spell found themselves free from the condition. During that moment, the two quickly regained their thoughts and created a portal before running for their lives. Their son was far stronger than both of them, monstrously so. The very day he was born, Fu enthralled his own parents to do his bidding. He called them toys and treated them as such. After so many successive failures, first with the lackluster pickings amongst evil souls to the new form that Goku and Vegeta had access to, all the way up to getting a Stardust Breaker to the face. Today was not a good day. Fu was pissed, to say the least. Growling with anger as he looked over the damage to his realm, the Demon King gripped his knuckles before observing the damage to his body. Smoke was rising from his back. His shirt was torn to shreds. The back of his shoulders was roasted, and the purple skin he was so fond of was a shade darker than before. Half of his body was covered in burn marks, blood, and a few layers of missing skin, showing the black muscles within. Even if Boo hadn't taken the brunt of the attack, Fu might have been able to keep his life. But then everything he was working for would have been lost. Fu looked at Boo and sighed. He then placed his hand out to the Majin and cast his rebirth spell. Normally, this spell can only be used on a dead soul. However, if used on a living person in Boo's condition, the effects can be quite interesting. Boo's body exploded into a puff of smoke before reforming into his previous form. Fu scanned the struggling Majin and said, "Well, maybe it wasn't all bad." Fu could sense the two energies fighting on inside Boo. It continued to rage against one another until the rebirth spell forced both positive and negative energies inside his body to realign and find balance. Boo's body returned to normal. His size was around a teenager. The skin armor that he gained from absorbing Janemba didn't look demonic at all, but more high-tech. It had transformed into something sleek and almost carried a positive essence. His skin was still pink, and he had his original facial features, but Janemba's crown and horns were gone. Bu's pain finally ended after Fu tampered with him in the lab. For now, the Majin was put into a deep sleep to recover any further damage to his soul. The rebirth allowed his soul to form anew, but it would take time for it to heal up properly. The worst part was that Fu was unaware of how long it would take for him to wake up. He spent the time lamenting over the many things that were out of his control today. Needless to say, it didn't take long until it started to annoy Fu. Fu then gripped his fists as he said, "Well done, Vegeta. I guess you really pulled one over on me. I didn't expect the Stardust Breaker could track Bu through my own portal. Even my phase-out spell was useless against something that attacks the soul." Fu made the phase-out spell by taking several stealth-type magics from the gift he was given by that strange angel from another reality and mixing them with any other stealth-related magics he could get a hold of in his travels. In the end, it helped him create a spell that could hide from even the Grand Priest's all-seeing eye. Well, as long as the Celestial Father wasn't looking too hard, that is. Fu then walked over to a healing pod and stared at the person inside. Long spiky black hair and a dark brown tail floated amongst a giant of a man. "I guess I'll have to send you a present to repay you." "So, cooler," Fu shouted. The two walked in and bowed. "Yes, master. Find my parents and bring them back. You can use the ship to track them down. Also, get this guy acclimated as soon as you can. Tell him to pay the current King of the Saiyans a visit. You can inform him that Vegeta's ancestor was the one who beat him and left him for dead. As for the ancient frost demon, after he plays his part, I'll go pick him up." The two nodded their heads. Cell walked over to the pod and said, "Kumba, was it? Wake up." The eyes inside the pod glowed red. Kumba, the evil Saiyan, grinned as he destroyed the healing tank and stepped out. Gogeta smiled as he admired his work. With the defeat of Janemba and Fu, all of the realms in the afterlife suddenly started to heal from the damage and regain the balance they once had. Gogeta then used his instant transmission to appear on Earth, before he told Bulma to use the Dragon Balls to undo the damage done by the evil souls that escaped. "Just wish it to be like before Janemba was born," Gogeta said as she started flying off. "Where are you going?" Bulma asked. "Because of the enemy we were fighting, we increased the fusion time needed to deal with our foe by a little too much. We still have around 2 hours until we defuse, so I want to go take Whis up on his offer now," Gogeta explained. Bulma sighed and shook her head. "Go on then, I'll take care of the wish." Gogeta nodded his head and teleported to Beerus's castle. After bribing the angel with some food, the two began fighting. Whis was the ultimate teacher that everyone could only ever hope for. All of Gogeta's movements and techniques were memorized in an instant. Whis appeared to be having fun as he was using his full attention to battle it out with Gogeta. Gogeta threw out punches and kicks, moved so quickly that they could overcome even time itself. However, Whis blocked with ease as he waved his staff around as he said, "Good, now show me everything." Gogeta continued to do his best to attack, but no matter the effort the fused warrior put in, he always seemed one step behind the angel. Gogeta paused mid-attack and suddenly jumped back. "Oh, your senses are very impressive, but I'd say you overreacted. It was only a little kick to the shin," Whis teased. Gogeta sweated and thought, "Little kick my ass. That would have torn me in two." He calmed down and started to relax. Whis smiled and said, "I'm attacking." Just as the punch was about to hit, Gogeta's true Super Saiyan God green form disappeared. As the Angle's fist flew towards him, Gogeta simply tilted his head by less than an inch. Whiz's attack shot past Vegeta's face and at a speed almost too fast for Gogeta to handle. Whis then started to use a series of open palm strikes. Gogeta continued to dodge them, only using the absolute minimal amount of space between Whiz's attacks. A bluish haze started to surround Gogeta's body before white steam began rising from his skin. Whis was surprised to see what he was witnessing. At the moment, the fused Saiyan had no wasted movements in his actions. Each attack was narrowly avoided, leaving only the smallest of spaces between the angel's attacks. Whis continued to strike out hundreds of times, and Gogeta avoided them all. Winds and powerful forces rippled out and shook the planet. Constant dust plumes were kicked up when they met fists on the ground, yet Gogeta remained safe. The angel smiled as he recognized the form Gogeta had achieved and clapped his hands together before saying, "Impressive, you two actually managed to touch upon Ultra Instinct." Whis then thought, individually, both Goku and Vegeta are very close reaching the first stage. I'd say just a single step away. Not bad, right? Gogeta bragged. A light shined in Whis's eyes, moving so quickly that Gogeta couldn't even sense, much less see. Whis disappeared and reappeared next to Gogeta's side. Then, with a light chuckle, the angel released a simple flick towards Gogeta's cheek. Gogeta tried to lean back to avoid the blow. However, Whis's attack was too fast. The flick caused a small sonic boom that shook the planet, while the force from the blow cut across the fused Saiyan's face, creating a large gash on his cheek. Whipping the blood off his face with his thumb, Gogeta smiled before he said, "Wow, I better not hold back. Grand Kai Koroken." Gogeta's 100 times Kaioken and his 100 times Kuraken fused together to make a 100 by 100 multiplier. With his power boosted by 10,000, Gogeta started to dodge again, but this time he was striking back as well. The angel easily avoided the barrage of attacks coming towards him. Every time Gogeta punched or kicked, Whis would block, dodge, and counter, always choosing the perfect time to move. Whis suddenly sped up. Using great force, the angel reached out with a grabbing motion faster than Gogeta could react to, gripping the fused Saiyan by the collar of his shirt. Whis then let out a coy smile before he started tossing Gogeta around in circles. Gogeta felt like he was on a roller coaster that he couldn't get off of. His body turned into a blur as Whis flung him around like a pair of nunchaku. The fused Saiyan felt like puking seconds, before Whis suddenly threw Gogeta down, tapping him on the shoulder and adding a powerful spin into the mix. The throw sent Gogeta flying down like a spiraling missile and crashing straight towards the lake below. The fused Saiyan slammed into the surface of the lake head first, causing a massive geyser of water to shoot into the sky. Rain droplets of lake water rushed across the planet, while Gogeta's body continued to drill through the water like a speeding bullet. When he finally made contact with the ground, Gogeta grunted as his body backslammed against the bottom of the lake. The force from the impact caused a massive wave to shoot into the air while shaking the whole pyramid-shaped planet. Gogeta quickly flew out and powered up as much as possible, sending thousands of attacks towards Whis. In a desperate attempt to land a single blow, Gogeta forced out everything he had. Because of the fierce energy of his Grand Kaikoro Ken technique and the calming control of the pseudo-ultra instinct form, it was as if all the potential in their bodies was brought to the surface. The combined might of all his Saiyan transformations burst out. Not even mastered TSSG Green could compare to Gogeta's current power. To Gogeta, it felt like all of his Super Saiyan and God forms melded together. Even though he was only using a pseudo-ultra instinct, the power was no laughing joke. In the end, Whis still managed to dodge all of Gogeta's attacks with ease. He then smiled softly, and before Gogeta could react, Whis hit him 3 times with beyond light-speed punches. One in the center of his gut, another at the center of his chest, and the last on the center of his chin. Gogeta fell into the depths of the water. As his back slammed against the surface of the lake again, another gargantuan wave shot out and covered the planet. Whis simply smiled and said, "You forget I've already mastered Ultra Instinct to a level you can't even comprehend yet. On top of all that, I am still stronger than you." Gogeta then flew out with all of his power and tried to punch Whis in the face. However, Whis raised his hand and chopped the side of the fused Saiyan's neck. Gogeta yelled out in pain before he flew back onto the ground and defused. Both Goku and Vegeta stared at the sky with blank and disappointed expressions. Even Gogeta was no match for the Angel of Destruction. Just how strong is this guy? Vegeta thought as he stood up. Goku laughed and said, "Man, I didn't even catch a glimpse of Whis' true power. I can't wait to fight him for real." Vegeta chuckled. "I suppose that does sound like fun. Were you two done bathing? If so, I want that super secret prize you offered," Whis said with a simple but pleasant smile. "Fine, Kakarot. What kind of noodles do you want?" Vegeta asked. "Ooh, 10 meat ramen, please." Goku jumped up with an excited expression. Vegeta smiled and brought out a table, heated water, and enough dried ramen and sidings to feed a small town. Whis ate with a smile on his face, and then the three of them proceeded to feast until it was all gone. Since Beerus was sleeping, he missed out. After finishing off the last cup, Whis smiled and said, "This is amazing, and all you need is hot water. So do when train now, 'cause I don't think I can move at the moment." Goku patted his bulging belly. Vegeta was no better. He was starving after the intense day he had, and really cut loose. Whis laughed and said, "Why don't we wait an hour?" After laughing, the two relaxed and listened to Whis' verbal teaching about Gogeta's skills. The two benefited a lot, even more so after they started to train. Using the skills firsthand really amped up their understanding. A week later, the two returned to Earth and met up with their families. Vegeta learned of the outcome of his tournament and was surprised by who won. Although it was funny to hear before the prelims began, Goten and Trunks fused and tried to say that since their age combined was greater than 18, they should be able to fight as Goteniks. Vegeta had to admit he'd probably allow that. Unfortunately, they were cut off by Bulma and Chi-Chi yelling at them. The two mothers then proceeded with the act of slapping the backs of Gotenks' heads and grounding them for misbehaving. Goten didn't talk to Trunks for a few weeks after that incident. He was rather mad at him for ruining his chance at achieving first place in the Junior League. The first match was Gardenia Vethi vs Vegeta Sr., husband versus wife. Vegeta laughed as he heard his father had obtained True Super Saiyan God Blue just to be outshone by his mum's True Super God Purple. His dad then promptly had his ass handed to him before his mother was declared the first winner. Next was Gohan versus Bardock. The fight started strong. Gohan flew out in his base form and attacked with all his martial prowess. His punches were refined, his kicks not lacking in skill, and his movements were all strategical. Honestly, Gohan's style was more similar to Bardock's than his own father's. Bardock blocked his attacks with ease and suddenly landed a solid punch against his grandson, hitting him in the face. Gohan transformed into a Super Saiyan, but so did Bardock. He flew forward and kicked Gohan in the gut before flying around and giving him an axe hammer blow to the back of the head. Gohan spun down and quickly realized starting up slow was no good. Instantly transforming into a true Super Saiyan God Green, he flew in for the knockout. However, Bardock transformed as well. The two perfected TSSGGs were punching and kicking up a storm. Even a Kaioken times 100 was used, making the barrier surrounding the floating planet of a stage stronger than ever before. The crowd oohed and awed while the grandfather and grandson duked it out. Gohan managed to land a punch, but Bardock retaliated by grabbing his wrist and kicking his side. Gohan yelled in pain but managed to fire off a one-handed Kamehameha that forced Bardock to let go. Dodging the blast, Bardock powered up a riot Kamehameha and launched at Gohan. While Gohan deflected the blast, Bardock appeared behind him and kicked him in the back of the head. Unfortunately, Bardock was slightly stronger than his grandchild, and it showed throughout the entire match. Both had achieved true Super Saiyan God Green, surprising much of the crowd while making the Sun family proud. Gohan continued to punch and kick in his family's style. Mixing in what he learned from others, he felt that he was barely able to contend with his grandfather. As the fight continued, Gohan used less and less of Roshi's teachings and started to form his own. The goal of the hermit was to get his students to accomplish exactly what Gohan was experiencing. He was shedding the useless movements and attacking with more ferocity. Gohan tried to kick at Bardock's neck, only for his grandfather to dodge. However, Gohan dropped to the ground and used a sweep kick to make Bardock jump back. Once he was in the air, Gohan teleported behind him and kicked Bardock in the back. Bardock smiled as he tucked in and rolled around in midair. Then, with a simple but speedy blast, the Elder Saiyan shot Gohan in the face. It wasn't enough to do any damage, but it was more than enough to give him time to recover and launch a counterattack. Bardock's body bulked up slightly as he used Roshi's full power technique. It brought out the limits of his Saiyan body and doubled his overall strength. Gohan then took a powerful blow to the back of the neck, forcing him to lose consciousness. Good job, you're finally finding Gohan's style of the Kami school. I'm proud of you, kid. There you have it, folks. The winner of the second round by knockout is Susan Bardock, the announcer declared as the crowd cheered loudly. In the end, Bardock outfought his grandson and won because of the overwhelming wealth of life and death situations he had to overcome. The sheer amount of combat expertise Bardock had dwarfed their near-equal power. Compared to Bardock's overall battle record, Gohan hasn't even fought 1,000th of the battles his grandfather experienced. Next was Zihei versus Tien. The master and disciple pair battled it out with everything they had. The battle began with them exchanging a dance-like form of combat that made the crowd look on in joy. The powerful blows that were hidden within their movements, the style and grace they had when they dodged, and the overwhelming speed caused clashes that can compete with a god. They even used several secret techniques solely belonging to the three-eyed race. They both grew 2 pairs of arms and 2 additional faces as they roared out. Their keys surged into the sky as their powers were magnified by the form. This wasn't like the energy construct that Raji used. Their arms and faces were no different than real flesh and bone. They both jumped back and used the same Grand Kaioken Tien's student used earlier. Tien revealed that he too had unlocked his mana by awakening his third eye. They managed to trade a couple of blows this time. Tien hit his master with a fierce downward swinging elbow to the jaw before following with an uppercut that slammed into the bottom of Zihei's chin. Their third eyes locked on each other before Zihei managed to overcome Tien's mental defenses. The moment Tien fell for the illusion, Zihei went on the offense and hit his student in the gut. The force from the punch forced Tien to lower his upper body while the Grandmaster's foot spun around in the air. Before Tien could react, the bottom of Zihei's foot slammed into his cheek and sent him flying into the air. Tien recovered and tried to use a tri-beam, but his master was too fast. The last thing he remembered was the feeling of his spine cracking while Zihei appeared behind him. His foot was firmly lodged in Tien's back before the three-eyed hybrid slammed into the ground. It seemed the fight was over. However, before Mr. Announcer could say anything, a large black dog leapt from the smoke and charged towards Zihei's neck. "Celestial dog," Tien shouted as the key construct tried to snap down its jaw. "Divine armor, divine spear," Tien roared. As Tien's third eye glowed with God Ki, a very solid set of full-plate armor, mixed with Chinese-style attire, appeared around his body. In his hand was a 3-bladed spear that radiated with an intense God Ki. "Wow, what's up with that armor and spear?" Goku said with wide eyes. "That God Ki, it's nothing like our God Ki, but it is no less fierce," Vegeta muttered as he sensed the waves of energy rippling off his body. Zihei smiled as his own celestial dog jumped up and took Tien's dog down. "I see you've mastered the divine armor and spear. You've come along quickly in your short-time training," Zihei complimented, as their dogs made of black fire bounced around the ring while attacking each other. Tien charged out with weapon in hand. He instantly appeared in front of Zihei and swung down with the 3-bladed spear. However, Zihei smiled and said, "Too young." With a powerful eruption of energy, the divine armor and a sword appeared in Zihei's possessions. He countered Tien and slammed the spear away before he kicked Tien back to the ground. Tien rushed back into the sky and the two began exchanging dozens of blows. Every time their weapons clashed, the two warriors sent screeching clangs that rattled the environment. Tien swung his spear around his body and tried to launch it towards Zihei. Zihei responded by pointing the tip of his sword at Tien's spear and pushed him back before invading his area of attack and kicking him in the gut, making Tien curl over. Zihei's sword whipped through the air as he aimed for the back of his student's neck. Before he could reach his target, Tien blocked with the polearm and dropped the end of the spear to the ground before vaulting off it and landing a double jump kick to his master's chest. Zaihei smiled as he backed off, rubbing the slight sting of pain he felt on his chest. Tien continued to press his assault. His spear rushed out, stabbing in rapid succession. The speed in which he thrust his spear made it look like multiple spears were all striking the same location. However, Zuni countered with his own set of stabs. Every clang that sent out hurricane force gusts was a clear sign that the tip of his sword smacked against the tip of Tien's spear. Tien then waved his hand in mysterious pattern as the spear seemed to bend. Dragon Tooth! The spear curved up and shot back down like a snake, launching for its prey. Zihei then rose his hand and gripped the divine spear by the pole and said, "Your spear work is a little off." Then with a fierce pull, Zihei yanked Tien towards him while hitting him with the flat side of his sword. The Chinese-style blade smacked into the top of Tien's head and sent him crashing back into the arena.
"Pay attention, my student,"
Zihei said as he made a certain hand sign. It was in the shape of a triangle with his thumbs facing inward. Heavenly punishment. A lightning storm appeared above the planetoid ring and sent ripples of God K throughout the arena. You have just started your journey. Unlocking the divine K that lies within your third eye has allowed you to use the divine techniques of our clan. However, you still have much to learn, Zihei informed before he lowered his hand. 10 bolts of lightning slammed down on Tien and made his scream in pain as the divine armor around his body dissipated. Smoke rose from his skin while Zonhe flew down to check on his disciple's condition. However, the moment he landed, Tien smirked and spoke weakly. Neotri formation. 3 markings appeared on the ground around Zuhei's feet and exploded into the sky with a powerful burst of divine ki. Zihei stood in the center of the attack while 3 large bursts of divine ki shot into the barrier in the form of prism. However, it appeared that Zihei was able to not only resist the energy, but redirect it as well. The markings warped as the beam suddenly shot over and smashed Tien into the floating planet of a stage. A bit young to be using a formation on an old coot like me, Zihei chuckled as he picked up his unconscious student and leapt from the ring. Incredible. Forming weapons and armor from energy, manifesting dogs made of black fire. We are witnessing history in the making, people. Give up for our winner by knockout, Grandmaster Zihei, the announcer declared as the crowd cheered at the top of their lungs. Just as Bardock did, Zihei managed to win due to his overpowering experience. The older of the two won because he lived long lives full of battle. The next fight was another master against student. While she was not the personal student of Krillin, she had learned from him before she graduated from the Kami school. The two stood on stage and bowed to each other before the announcer shouted, "Fight." Krillin started off strong. He unleashed a set of 5 punches and 3 kicks. The punch at Vidal's face was blocked with an open palm before she lowered her stance and ducked under his hook. Krillin's fist came rising up from her bent position before Vidal stepped back and leaned her upper body away from the uppercut. Krillin then leapt up and punched downward at her face. Vidal raised her arm and blocked the attack while Krillin dropped to the ground and punched towards her gut. Raising her knee, Vidal blocked the punch with her kneecap and watched Krillin lower his stance while sweeping out with his leg. Vidal leaned back while handspringing, dodging, and landing in an upright position while Krillin flew forward with a flying kick. Sweat dripped off Vidal's forehead as she nearly dodged the kick and tried to strike out at Krillin. However, Krillin spun around and kicked off her punch before hitting her in the side of face with another kick. Vidal slid back and shot a blast to regain her balance. She then surrounded her arms in a thick layer of ki before rushing towards Krillin. Krillin dodged her initial punch and watched as the ki on her arm exploded to change the trajectory of fists. Her arm bent and exploded with power that went beyond her base energy by several times. Krillin placed his hand out and caught her fist before swinging her into the air. Micro-explosions from the densely compact hair surrounding her arms helped her to regain balance before she placed her arms behind her and blasted out, speeding her up as her feet shot out. Krillin smiled as he raised his hand out and stopped her rocket jump kick. The force for the blow was incredible. But Krillin didn't stop it with brute force. He let the energy flow free as he simply redirected her feet into his flow. Krillin moved his arms, guiding the kinetic force from the rocket kick and sent her flying towards the barrier. Vidal smiled as she flipped around midair and pointed her hand out while grabbing her arm with her other. Rocket bomber. Vidal called out as she created a massive sphere of K and shot it towards Krillin. The monk with the hair suddenly laughed as he attempted to kick the sphere away. However, the moment he touched the blast, it exploded in a fierce flash of heat and kinetic force. While Vidal charged up another, Krillin appeared behind her with a smoking gay and kicked her in the back of the head. Vidal yelped as she crashed onto the ground. However, Krillin simply held out his hand and shot off 4 staple-looking constructs of ki. They slammed into her arms, neck and legs, locking the female warrior to the ground. Krillin then landed beside Vidal and held a pointed black Kai blast towards her face. "I win," Krillin said as he saw his former student pouting. "Not yet. Kaiozenkan times 300. Vidal yelled as she bulked up and broke free from the restraints. Krillin smirked as he pulled the blast back and jumped away. Vidal gave chase and Krillin began blocking her attacks. Unbeknownst to Vidal, seconds before her attacks connected, Krillin activated his Kaiozenkan for a portion of a second and took no damage. Vidal was burning through her stamina while Krillin slapped away her attacks and even landed a counter. With a Kaiozenkan times 100, Krillin managed to knock the wind out of Vidal. The teenage superhero cried out in pain before Krillin spun around and kicked her in the chin. Krillin fought Vidal and did his best to push his fellow Earthling's strength to new heights. Vidal roared as she pushed the Kaizenkin to times 500. It felt like her body was beginning to break. However, she pushed on. Krillin amped up his own multiplier, but kept on the pressure. Vidal swung her fists and kicked out with a barrage of honed martial skills. Every punch was of proper form, and every kick could kill the Frizdeer from Namek with ease. In that battle, Vidal experienced several breakthroughs of her own, but Krillin was just too strong. She pushed her Kaiozenkan to times 1000 and powered up a fierce attack. Spirit Cannon. Vidal roared as she slammed her hands together while intertwining her fingers. Vidal collected energy from nature and herself as she condensed a single sphere that continued to grow larger between her hands. As her grasps loosened, the vibrant white and blue sphere between her hands grew larger before she condensed it back down. After 10 seconds passed, Krillin smiled as she pulled his hands back and threw the sphere out towards him. Krillin was impressed, but with a simple times 500 of his Kaiozenkan, he managed to slap the sphere away. The spirit cannon exploded and shook the entire arena. The energy inside the barrier flooded everything while whiting out the cameras. When the energy faded, it showed Krillin carrying an unconscious Vidal. His jig was reeked and he was covered in some bruises. Krillin then chuckled as he fed her a senzu bean and said, "Not bad, kiddo. That last attack almost got me. Just wait. One day I'll surpass you all." Vidal huffed as she flew down and landed next to Gohan. The crowd cheered at Krillin's victory while Gohan comforted his girlfriend. Lazuli against Gardnia was a good fight. The two were evenly matched, even when going at full power. Gardner punched out with all her might, only for Lazuli to stop it was a punch of her own. The clash sent shockwaves out as they tested each other's strength. "How about we stop holding back? What do you say?" Lazuli asked. Gardner grinned and said, "Sounds fun." Lazuli's Deus Ex mode and Gardner True Super Saiyan God Purple came out on full display. They charged at each other and started to exchange blows. An uppercut landed on Gardner's chin, knocking her back a few feet. Gardner shot back with a kick to the gut and a backflip kick to Lazuli's chin. Lazuli recovered and hit Gardner with a series of punches. One to her head, two to her abdomen. Gardner back off before firing off dozens of ki blasts, shaking the arena and covering it in smoke. Lazuli ran out of the smoke screen only to be kicked in the face by the Saiyan standing queen. Lazuli bounced off the ground before lobbing a powerful ki blast that hit Gardner in the chest. Gardner smiled as she tumbled across the ground and placed her hands together. Final flash! A huge beam of concentrated ki shot out at Lazuli. Lazuli grinned as she held her hand out and absorbed the energy coming from the attack. Before Gardner could do anything, Lazuli bounced back into the fight. Their fists and legs turned into colorful blurs as they exchanged dozens of blows in under a single second. They then parted while Gardner blasted out a 2 beams, sparking laser. Lazuli grinned as she started absorbing the energy, but at the moment it touched her palm, Gardner appeared behind her and kicked in the side of the head with a jumping spin kick. Lazuli tumbled across the ground and stood back up with her martial pose. "Pretty good. Now let's kick it up a notch," Gardner said as she tried to punch Lazuli in the face. However, Lazuli countered and chopped Gardner in the throat before kneeing her in the chin with a flying knee kick. Gardner held back her pain before she charged back at Lazuli and started exchanging blow for blow. The two fought for almost an hour. The stalemate seemed to never end. However, Gandhi eventually lost because she hadn't completely mastered the true Super Saiyan God Purple form. The Purple God form ate up Gardner's stamina rapidly, and due to Lazuli's infinite endurance, she was able to outlast the once Saiyan Queen. Incredible, folks. Our winner is Lazuli by knockout. The announcer shouted as Gardner laughed and at a senzu bean. "We should do this again sometime," Gardner suggested. "If there is prize money, you can count on me," Lazuli replied, shaking the stand-in queen's hand. The two returned to the spectators section for the competitors and watched as the next battle was called up to the ring. Raditz went up against Bardock and smiled at each other before the announcer shouted, "Begin." The two held nothing back as they started off combat in Super Saiyan Green. Raditz slammed 4 punches into Bardock's face, while Bardock countered with a gut punch and a flying jump kick to the bottom of Raditz's chin. Raditz then grabbed his father's foot and threw him face first into the ground before blasting his back with a double sundae. As he flew back, Bardock exploded out from the ground and performed a spinning uppercut to the bottom of Raditz's chin and kicked him in the gut. Raditz coughed up a mouthful of air before they too started blinking in and out of visibility. They moved so fast, they only appeared to at the moment of their attacks. The arena constantly shook as their fists and legs collided with one another. The speed of their attacks sent out powerful gusts that made the barrier quake. The crowd was shouting at the top of their lungs while the fight devolved into a fierce brawl. Many times Raditz pushed through his limits and rose up to meet his father's power. But every time he made progress, so did Bardock. The two charged at each other and punched one another's faces. The pain was clear to see as they recoiled backward and nearly fell over. They were out of stamina, out of energy, and barely able to stand. It was a close fight. In the end, Bardock managed to outlast his son and pulled a narrow victory by knockout. With a powerful headbutt, Bardock knocked his son out and claimed victory. The crowd continued to cheer. It took a few minutes for them to calm down before calling up the next fight. Lazuli versus Grandmaster Zihei. Just like the previous match, the two started out going at full tilt. They smashed into each other and fought like there was no tomorrow. Lazuli's punch nearly knocked out the Grandmaster's teeth before she aimed a kick at his crotch. Zihei placed his hands down and blocked while using the force from her kick to elevate himself and kick her in the face. Lazuli backflipped and shot off a series of quick ki blasts while Zihei equipped his divine armor and sword. Using his superior sword skills, Zihei slapped aside her ki blast and closed in on her. Then, with a powerful swing, he cut at Lazuli's torso. Lazuli's eyes shined before she said, "Lemniscate mode." The two Infinity engines inside her began humming to life as a second Deus Ex mode came online. With a 1000 times multiplier stacking on top of her 1000 multiplier, the energy shot up by 1,000,000 times. Kaiozenkan times 1000. Lazuli grinned as he power surged to 1,000,000,000 times her base. Unlike humans, cyborgs could wield the Kaioken effectively, and since Krillin made an even stable version of the technique, the cyborgs could push it to the limits without breaking a sweat. Zihei was dumbfounded by the keyless power she was giving off and only felt his sword and armor shatter under one mighty punch. Zihei rolled across the ground, forced himself to come to a stop before leaping to the side. Lazuli's legs slammed into the ground beside him as Zihei tried to kick her in the waist. Instead of landing the attack, Zehe took a punch to the face that buried him beneath the arena. 10 copies shot out of the ground and started doing the fusion dance in the air. Lazuli frowned before saying, "Not happening." She dashed into the air and tried to attack one of the clones. However, the clones sent out 10 celestial dogs to try and tie her down. Cosmic barrage. Lazuli raised his hand and displayed 8 glowing orbs on her fingertips. They all shot out, killing the celestial dogs before he rammed her foot into the main body's stomach. Zehe tried to heal himself and make him strong enough to win through fusing with his split bodies. However, Lazuli interfered with his technique and managed to knock him out with a powerful punch to the jaw. Zehe lamented, but he could only shake his head as he stepped off the stage. While the announcer declared Lazuli the winner, Zehe mumbled, "I shouldn't have underestimated her. She took me out before I could develop it." Next was Krillin versus Lazuli. Unlike the other fights, this fight didn't last long. After exchanging a few punches, the two looked at each other with love in their eyes. "I give up," Lazuli said before she kissed Krillin on the cheek. She then whispered something into Krillin's ear that made him blush. I just can't say no to you," Krillin lowered his head. "Take first place, honey. I'll take third. That way I get even more prize money." Lazuli giggled as she floated off stage. The last fight was Krillin versus Bardock. Krillin smiled as he looked over at Bardock and said, "You know, this kind of reminds me of when I fought Goku in that tournament all those years ago. You were children then. Let's see how my kid's rival fares against Saiyans," Bardock said before he transformed into a Super Saiyan. Krillin rubbed his nose before saying, "You guys aren't the only ones who can transform now." Krillin powered up and started yelling. Krillin's superhuman form wasn't too different from how a Super Saiyan works. His power magnified, his aura shifted from white into a copper color, his hair spiked up and turned bronze, while his eyes turned topaz orange. His power was only 35 times his base, but unlike Super Saiyans, there was no stamina drain from the get-go, only a time limit based on how much overall ki they had. The more ki, the longer they could sustain the form. Krillin even discovered that once he mastered the form, it increased his overall power multiplier to 50 and removed the time limit. Before Bardock could question him, Krillin grinned and said, "I'll have to thank Yudo and Zehe for helping me complete this technique. Their third eye's ability to see through falsities has helped me perfect a few of my techniques. Grand Chaos Zenken, maximum output." Bardock was about to transform into a higher form of Super Saiyan. However, Krillin Instant Boost increased his power by 5,000. He was too fast for Bardock to keep up with. With a multiplier of 250,000, Krillin used an instant movement to appear behind Bardock and land a knockout chop to the back of his neck. It was cheap, but Krillin managed to secure a solid victory against a stronger opponent. Saving the transformation was worth it. That shock and awe moment brought me the win. Krillin breathed a sigh of relief before walking over to help Bardock up. While he was declared winner, Vegeta smiled happy that the humans now had a transformer amongst them. He had made a wish to give them this power years ago when he informed Krillin that it was possible. However, he just told the dragon to give them similar power based on what would happen if humans naturally developed the transformations on their own. Even Vegeta didn't know how to trigger it or how the Saiyan trait would present itself within human bodies. It wasn't until Krillin met up with them and informed the Zetsu fighters that it required a mastery over one's ki. The Kaizenkin turned out to be the perfect form for training the body to be ready for the transformation. When one's understanding of ki reached a certain threshold, they needed to visualize the transformation process and pull the energy out with a great need or positive emotion. Danger and negative emotions didn't help them transform. Achieving enlightenment was the key. Vegeta was proud of that wish. It certainly made him happy that not everyone could just transform into superhumans, but it would require harsh training and a calm mind. It also made Vegeta think that since his race's population had not only recovered but flourished, it was time to remove the wish he made to allow his race to turn their lovers into Saiyans just by mating. After mulling over his decision, Vegeta handed out the prizes first for Krillin, second for Bardock, and third for Lazuli. Vegeta then went home expecting some big retaliation from Fu. However, that never came, and for a while, things returned to normal. As time passed, Vegeta and Goku continued to train like madmen. Thanks to the Saiyans and Earthlings joining the universe, a kind of enlightenment was achieved for the entire population of their universe. Ki control and ki training were beginning to become more and more commonplace. Saiyans and others that joined the Galactic Police went to worlds as heroes and spread the art of self-protection. A cycle of travel, fight, and teach started changing the fate of their mortal level. Time had changed once more. It was now common for many people traveled the stars in search of adventure. Some joined the Galactic Patrol, some went to distant planets to teach and spread their martial arts, and some went in search of fortune. As a byproduct, the entire universe grew stronger as a whole. 5 years later, age 70, both Goku and Vegeta were on a ship with all of the other Z fighters. It was Bulma 40A, Chaff, 38th birthday. Beerus was invited, so Vegeta wondered if he would just spend his time in peace for the events of the Battle of Gods. However, something happened that no one was expecting. A powerful presence appeared on the lookout that shook everyone to their core. A few minutes earlier, inside the time chamber, a doorway appeared on the opposite side of the Room of Spirit and Time's sole residential area. As the door opened, a young man walked through, revealing another time chamber behind him. Only, different from the Earth's time chamber, the alternate realm looked like its own little world. The time chamber in the other reality was full of boundless energy and countless life forms. Plants, mystical beasts, strange artifacts, and all sorts of monsters were populating the endless expanse. Immortal herbs that carried a magical scent poured out of the doorway alongside a powerful ambient aura. The sounds of people training could be heard in the distance alongside the roars and explosions made from combat. Instead of pure white skies, there were stars and entire galaxies without life, full of resources that could entice mortals and gods alike. The handsome youth had long dark grey hair that was braided into a thin ponytail. He had deep purple-colored eyes that shined like amethyst, a well-built and sturdy body, as well as flawless peachy skin. He wore a black and white martial arts-styled suit that had long sleeves and loose pants. Decorative armored braces were wrapped around his wrist and ankles, and his leather sandals were flat and fitted to his feet tightly. He carried a Nihonto, a curved katana, with blades on both sides. The sword was sheathed at his hip and had a long cloak hanging off of his waist like a half-worn kimono. The grey-haired youth smiled as he looked around. So this is the Dragon Ball universe. The laws here are very simple, but seem to carry on an overwhelming dominance and power. The youth walked out of the time chamber and immediately noticed that Kami was still around. He even had his youth restored, which surprised the young man even more than his overwhelming presence. So Dende isn't Earth's guardian god in this Vegeta's world. Interesting, the young-looking man said as he retracted his senses. Kami sensed Kibo walking through the lookout's inner sanctum and watched as he easily navigated his way through it. Coming up to the surface of the lookout, the mysterious youth saw the clear skies and smelled the clean air. The young man then smiled before he turned to a curious but wary Kame and said, "Hello, Kame." Kame looked at the youth with wide eyes. He could sense a deep and profound god essence rolling off of his body like a waterfall. "Who are you?" Kame asked with his defenses up. "I'm..." Back on Bulma's cruiser, everyone that could sense him gazed off in the direction of the lookout. Goku walked up to Vegeta and asked, "Who is that?" Vegeta grinned. "Someone I met once. He cleaved my head from my shoulders and beat me in a real fight." Goku looked at Vegeta and said, "He cut your head off. Did you heal it the moment it happened?" Vegeta shook his head and explained to Goku that he was brought to another universe through special means, and when he returned, he was healed of the damage. "Wow! So he's that strong?" Goku squealed like an excited child. "Knock it off, Kakarot. I was only showing the higher forms of true Super Saiyan God to aid him a bit. He took advantage of my kindness and beat me with a cheap trick." Vegeta scowled as he looked back to the lookout. However, it seems he has gotten a bit stronger since then. Nearby, resting on a lawn chair that was under an umbrella, was Beerus. He suddenly sensed what everyone else had and snapped his eyes open before saying, "Well, this is interesting." Whis, who was devouring a bowl of ice cream, looked over and said, "A friend of yours, Vegeta." Vegeta scratched his head and said, "I only met him once, but from his character and story, I'd say he's good enough to be called a friend." Vegeta was about to fly over when a youthful-looking man with dark grey hair suddenly appeared out of thin air. The visitor floated in front of everyone and said, "I found you. You're Kibo Hoshi, correct?" Vegeta announced. The youthful-looking man nodded his head and said, "I'm glad you remember me." Everyone crowded around him and started to gossip. "Who is this kid, and why is he so powerful?" Goten yelled in surprise. "What's with his hair color?" Trunks said with a confused expression on his face. "He's kinda cute," Ronch commented. "What a handsome fellow," Bulma said, making Vegeta's eyebrow twitch. "Wow! Is this guy a human?" Krillin asked as he sensed Kibo's energy. "Hey, do you want to fight?" Goku asked as he excitedly pumped his fist in front of his chest. Whis and Beerus were inspecting Kibo with a bit of a strange expression on their faces. "Odd, I've never sensed a power like this before," Whis thought as he stared at Kibo. Beerus's eyes squinted a bit as he said, "Well, this is odd. It's the first time I've failed to sense a mortal's power." Whis chuckled. "That's because you are assuming that he is immortal." Kaiba smiled and rubbed the back of his head. "I see that it's Bulma's birthday. What would make a good present?" Kibo waved his hand out and made a ring appear in his hand. "This is a spatial ring. It can store up to 100,000 cubic meters worth of space. You can't store anything that is living inside the spatial ring, with the exception of plant life. Time doesn't move inside the ring, so you can even store food inside it, and it won't rot. In order to use the spatial ring, just send your thoughts into the ring and command it to release the object you desire." Bulma caught the ring and stared at the simple black band. "Is it some sort of tech? How odd." Kibo landed on the boat when Beerus walked over and stared at the ring. "My, isn't this interesting? Is it a godly artifact?" Kibo laughed a little at seeing Beerus in real life. In Kibo's eyes, the god of destruction looked like an adorable cat. Holding in his laugh, Kibo straightened himself out and said, "Well, it could be considered one, but the materials used aren't very special. With my skills, I can even turn magic-grade materials into god items. It's probably my essence you sense coming from it. These, however," the Kibo pulled out a few pills, "can be considered to be real grade 1 god pills." Kaibo handed a small sack containing a few jade vases filled with grade 1 god pills to Vegeta. "An apology for using a cheap trick on you, but to be fair, deception is a part of battle too." Vegeta opened one of the vases and was surprised as the area filled up with godly essence. Kibo then went on to explain their purposes. "There are 7 types of pills in there and 200 in each vase." Kibo began pointing to all of the different types. "This one is a Dantian opening pill. It can allow mortals who've never trained before to open their lower Dantian." Pointing to another, he said, "This one is a heavenly essence booster pill. It can be used to cultivate heavenly energy, and the one next to it is called the Origin Booster Pill. It does the same thing as the last, only with Origin energy." Kibo then pointed to the next vase and said, "This one is a bit tricky. It can increase the durability of your body for a few hours. It's called the Adamantium Shell Pill. As long as you aren't being attacked by a peak mid-god, these pills can protect you from all damage." Beerus was licking his lips. He once recalled devouring a famous alchemist of this universe's pills. They didn't taste all that good, but the effects were more than satisfactory. Whis, however, just stared at Kibo like he was a complete mystery. "This one is special. You can only take it once. It's called the Nirvanic Rebirth Pill. It will wash your marrow, returning your bone age to when it was at the time when your latent potential was best. This can increase your future potential by leaps and bounds," Kibo said with a smile on his face. "How?" Vegeta asked. Kibo answered with a grin before he said, "It cleans your blood, purifying any junk déchiré while improving on your most powerful genetic traits. Lastly, it will strengthen your physique's abilities tenfold. However, keep in mind, this can only be taken once in a lifetime. A second will simply be wasting precious resources, Kibo explained as he pointed to the next vase. Who is this guy? Beerus thought. Such a pill can exist? If I were to eat it, would I return to my prime age? To a martial artist, one's bone age was very important. For instance, when Goku was in his 30s, went through the biggest jump in power in a short few years. It was because all of the latent talent that he built up during his childhood was being released by the pressure of stronger enemies. Goku's youth was filled with battles and countless martial experiences. All of that exploded from his core during the times when he needed it most. That kind of growth is rare for them these days. If it weren't for their progress reaching the stage of true Super Saiyan God Green, they wouldn't be making many strides in improving their base forms. Next, Kaibo pointed out another vase and said, "This one is a full recovery pill. If you eat them with senzu beans, the effects are greater than you can imagine. You could regrow lost limbs, heal any scar, and recover from a fatal wound as long as 6 minutes haven't passed and brain death has set in. Ooh, you could even heal any damage done to your soul." Kiba then pointed to the last vase, and this one is the heart-calming pill. It can clear one's head and refresh their mental state. Better than a cup of coffee. I also have them in the form incense sticks for long meditation periods. Drugs! Bulma shouted as she pointed at Vegeta's present. Kibo laughed. Not drugs. Well, these are not just any drugs. These are god pills, and they don't have any adverse effects. Well, except for a little pill poison. Which reminds me. Kiba pulled out another vase. I almost forgot. These are detox pills. They can clear the pill toxins from your body, so it's best to take these in moderation. Depending on the severity of the level of pill toxins, it could take anywhere from about a day to a year to dissipate. As long as you don't abuse them, these can aid in your training. Well, I'm not too sure about taking these drugs, Bulma said, crossing her arms. Kibo let out a mischievous smile and threw her a small jade vial that had 3 pills inside. This is called the face-preserving pill. It can only be taken one, but it can improve the looks of anyone who takes it by a whole tier level. Not only does it help you preserve your looks until you reach the end of your lifespan, but it also purifies your pores, making your skin flawless. Bulma's eyes widened and smiled as she said, "Well, it can't hurt to try them out a little." Vegeta scratched his head as he noticed a few glowing crystals at the bottom of the bag. Picking it up with a confused expression, Vegeta asked, "What's this?" Kibo smiled and said, "Those are grade 3 God Essence crystals. Mined them out of my own inner world too. It's pure God Essence. I don't know if you guys can make use of them. But what the hell, right? Inner world?" Everyone tilted their heads in confusion. "This is nice, but why are you giving us all these?" Vegeta asked, "I don't recall doing anything major to deserve all this. Believe me, Vegeta, you helped me far more than you realize. If I had continued down my path in godhood without fighting you, I would have ruined my future body cultivation." Kuba then smiled before continuing to speak. "I really owe you more, but at the moment, this is the best I can do." Beerus was eyeing the God Essence crystal like it was candy. A bit of drool slipped down his chin. He didn't know why, but for some reason that crystal greatly attracted his attention. Whis furrowed his brows. Even he sensed an alluring scent coming from the radiant clear crystal. "Well, okay. Thanks, I guess." Vegeta put the objects inside his pocket space and then asked, "I see you've gotten stronger. Why is it I can sense the energy of a god when you aren't using that weird platinum form?" Kibo smiled. "That's because even in my base form, I am a god now." Kibo's words made everyone gasp. A human god? I come from a reality that operates off of different rules and methods for gaining power. For instance, my world's mortals can train to become gods by becoming immortals and going through a divine tribulation. Kibo explained a bit about himself and his universe. Everyone was shocked to hear his words. Even Whis showed a surprised expression. 3 tribulations to become a god, huh? His world is different. Our universe only needs 1 tribulation, Whis thought as he stared at Kibo. Kibo was constantly answering the questions asked by the Zeta fighters, when Goku suddenly jumped up, interrupting the rest of the group with a loud and excited shout. "I heard you beat Vegeta in a fight. Please, can we fight just a little?" Goku said as he gestured by placing his thumb and index finger a few inches away from touching. Kaibo laughed and said, "Sure, I don't mind, but first, let me introduce my family first." Vegeta and the rest watched as a group of people and their kids appeared out of thin air. 8 of them were beautiful women. Sarada, Sakura, Himawari, Hinata, Shion, Karin, Rei, and Shina. The remaining 9 men were Naruto, Sasuke, Sutoramaru, Kakashi, Naruto, Boruto, Mitsuki, Kazuo, and Genji. "These are my best friends and their kids." Kiba introduced all of Team 7, then pointed to his wives. "These are my wives, Shion and Karin." Shion had long blonde hair and clear turquoise eyes. She wore a pale yellow long robe with a white Shine Maiden martial artist hybrid uniform underneath. Karin had long red hair that was tied up into a loose flowing ponytail. She wore a Chinese-looking dress with long skirt flaps that reached her knees, fishnet stockings, and long combat boots. "Wives! As in more than one!" Roshi cried out with an extremely jealous expression. Kibo could feel the eyes of everyone judging him when he coughed. "Well, there is a reason for this. My wives are both the same person and not at the same time." Kibo then went on to explain how his wives had the same soul but had different bodies. Roshi was still distracted by their beauty as Kibo went on to introduce his kids. "These 2 are my oldest son and daughter, Genji and Rai." The 2 walked up and bowed. "Hello, my name is Genji." Genji had dark grey hair like his father, and his looks were considered to be very attractive. Genji wore a cloak with a similar martial outfit to his father's. "I'm Rei. It's a pleasure to meet you all." Rei was a beauty that could steal the hearts of many men. She had long, free-flowing red hair, vibrant blue eyes, and a healthy, defined body. She wore a short-sleeved Chinese-styled top with a short skirt, red stockings, and black boot-type sandals. "What well-mannered children," Chi-Chi mentioned with a gentle smile. "And these 2 are my youngest, Kazuo and Shina. We had them after we became gods, so although they look 15, they are already in their 20s. The 2 bowed as well. Kazu was wearing something similar to armored clothing. There were patches of durable materials around his chest, arms, and legs. His pants were loose except where the armored parts were. Shina wore a beautiful half kimono made from a type of golden feathery material underneath. Over that, she wore a gold shining scale dress made out of some type of monster carcass. On her waist, blue silk wrap, and around her feet were a pair of black sandals that were very form-fitting. All of Kibo's children were both handsome treasures and rare beauties to behold. The group of Zit fighters quickly began socializing with them. Goku saw that not only was Kibo strong, but his children and wives all seemed to be on a similar level. With eyes shining brightly, Goku faced Kibo and said, "Can we fight now?" Kibo gave a quick laugh before saying, "I don't see why not." Beerus looked at Kibo with interest as he said, "Hey, Goku, why don't you let me have some fun first?" "No way, I asked him first." Goku shouted as he stomped his feet like a child. "Quit your complaining. You should show more respect to the god of destruction," Beerus shot back. Kibo then placed his finger to his chin as he said, "Actually, Goku did ask me first, so I will be fighting him first." Goku pointed his finger at Beerus and teased him by laughing. "Ha! Don't you know that the early bird gets the worm, Beerus?" Whis chuckled as well while Beerus stewed in his own embarrassment. Goku got into a fighting position when Kibo suddenly held his hand up and said, "I don't think we should fight on the boat." Bulma nodded her head. "You'll have to forgive Goku. He has a good heart, but when he hears anything related to fighting, his IQ tends to drop by a full digit." Kibo laughed as he floated all the way over the ocean. Goku followed him while everyone else watched from the boat. "So is this guy as powerful as father said he was?" Genji asked Vegeta. Vegeta smiled and said, "Kakarot is around the same strength as I am. I think your father will have quite the handful dealing with that guy." Genji's nose scrunched up as he said, "My dad is the strongest. If he can beat you, he can beat this clown. Vegeta laughed. Ha! Kakarot. It appears I'm not the only one who thinks you are a clown. Goku and Kibo floated a few feet away from the ocean surface and smiled at one another. Goku got into a fighting stance while Kibo held his hands behind his back. "Get him, Dad!" Goten shouted. "Kick his butt, Dad!" Kibo's children shouted back. The two gave each other a competitive stare as everyone started to get riled up. "I'm gonna attack now," Goku said because he didn't see Kibo putting up any guard. Kibo smiled and said, "Relax, this posture is my natural fighting stance." He then placed his arms at his side and looked completely relaxed. Goku was about to attack but suddenly stopped. Odd, no openings. He then circled Kibo. No matter which angle he inspected, Goku saw that Kibo's simple stance was actually airtight and without any weaknesses. Goku shook off his doubts and flew straight into combat. A fierce punch was thrown out that made the sky quake. Kibo smiled as he raised his hand and blocked Goku's fist with an open palm. A shockwave spread out, yet the two hadn't moved from their spot. Goku's face was full of joy as he said, "You are strong. Be careful. I'm going to kick it up to full strength." Kibo smiled and replied, "Please go right ahead. No need to hold back." Goku's arms turned into blurs as he continued his assault. Kibo grinned as he started to block with ease. The flurry of attacks started to grow more and more intense as the water around them shot all over the place and rained down on the protective array around the boat that Karin and Shiin set up. Kibo performed a set of hand seals and shouted, "Storm Dragon's Breath." Placing his hands in front of his mouth, Kibo blew out a stream of violent multicolored lightning towards Goku. Goku's eyes widened as he flew to the side as quickly as he could. However, the lightning attack managed to scrape against his backside. The Saiyan's guy lit up in flames, making Goku jump around while shouting, "Hot, hot, hot, hot." Kibo smiled as he moved his hand seals rapidly and said, "Let me take care of that for you. Water style, Leviathan's geyser." A giant water serpent roared out the ocean below and doused Goku's body with a massive hydro explosion. Goku flew back before regaining his balance and blew his breath in surprise. His shirt was burned, so he went ahead and ripped it off before saying, "Wow, it felt like nature itself was attacking." "I'm surprised you're in one piece." "Those are S-class jutsas," Kibo complimented. Everyone was impressed with the ninja's abilities. The fact that they could do so many things with energy was opening their eyes to new ideas. "Okay then, 100% of my power coming right up." Goku stood in his kami stance and suddenly disappeared in a blur of intense speed. A massive explosion shook the planet as Kibo had taken a full attack. Although he said 100%, Goku was only referring to the full power of his base form. Kibo's feet slid a few feet across the surface of the ocean as he said, "Not bad." "Wow, I hit you with everything I had," Goku said with wide eyes before patting his fist into his palm. "I guess I'll have to step it up a notch." Goku pushed his origin ki to its limits and said, "Now let's see how skilled your hand-to-hand is. Get ready." Kibo's stance suddenly changed. Placing one hand out and the other behind his back, the god of Shinobis then waved his outward hand towards himself and said, "Less talk, more fight." Goku charged at Kibo and punched out with all his might. Kibo tilted his head, both dodging the attack while thrusting out his arm towards Goku's chest with an open palm. Goku crouched down, avoiding Kibo's attack. As Kibo's hand skid past the top of his skull, his palm turned into a claw. Before Goku could react, Kibo pulled back his arm in a whip-like manner. Using all his strength, Goku leapt back, feeling Kibo's claw hand rip across his chest, drawing blood. Goku then jumped back into Kibo's guard and started to raise his fist into an uppercut towards his chin. Kibo countered by raising his foot up and stomping down on Goku's rising fist, leaping up off of his hand and aiming a spinning kick to the side of Goku's head. Goku then stopped his momentum short and raised his arm while reinforcing it with his other hand. A loud crack echoed out as the blow forced Goku to the side. However, after shaking off the numb feeling, the Saiyan threw out a quick Kamehameha. In response, Kibo pulled his sword out, causing the hairs on Goku's neck to stand at attention. A simple swing of his blade tore through both the Kamehameha and the space surrounding it. Before he could move, the blade beam shot past Goku's face, nicking him on the cheek. A small trail of blood dripped down Goku's cheek as he thought, "Damn, this is really fun." With a mighty shout, Goku transformed, flooding this area with golden energy. Goku turned into a Super Saiyan and stood back in his traditional stance. "Okay, now the real fight begins." Kibo smiled and said, "I can do that too." A loud explosion of energy shot out of Kibo's body. His hair slightly spiked up and turned golden. "This is my superhuman form, stage 1. Goku's eyes went wide. "This is going to be so fun." Krillin, who was holding his daughter on his shoulder, looked at Kibo with surprise before saying, "How come his superhuman form is so different than mine?" The two warriors clashed again. A massive wave of water blasted out in a ring from the impact point and rocked the boat nearby. If not for Shion and Karin's barrier, it would have capsized. The two fighters suddenly started to strike at each other so fast that each time their fists connected, giant waves flew out in every direction. Thankfully, Kibo's family and the Z fighters quelled the waves before they ever got anywhere near the shores. If they hadn't, the fight would have already drowned all of Earth. Kibo kept speeding up, causing Goku some fright. Their battle then intensified as they started to push their bodies to the limit. Goku noticed that he was starting to lag behind, so he activated his Super Saiyan 2 transformation. Kibo did the same and caused Goku to smile even more as they continued their fight. Goku managed to get a hit in, slamming his fist into Kibo's gut. Kibo let out a winded groan as Goku followed up with a spinning kick to Kibo's side. Kibo blocked and grabbed his leg in a lock while he used his other hand to attack Goku's chest. Azure Dragon's palm. The image of a giant blue-green dragon formed around Kibo's hand as he stepped in and punched out with a spinning dragon's claw. As the dragon roared, Kibo gripped his fist and slammed it into Goku's chest. The image of an azure dragon pushed Goku into the air, where he suddenly transformed into a Super Saiyan 3 and shouted, "Great Dragon Fist!" A golden dragon roared out from Goku's fist, making Kibo smile and transform into a superhuman stage 3. With another fierce swing, Kibo let loose another azure dragon's palm strike. The two dragons clashed, causing the solar system to shake. The collision of gold and azure shined bright enough to see from galaxies away. The two bounced off each other, disappearing and reappearing all across the surface of the ocean. The viewer's eyes darted back and forth and saw that even when moving at extremely high speeds, their attacks remained fluid and skillful. Goku kicked out with a spinning kick. Kibo countered by pushing his knee away and punching towards the tip of his jaw. Goku leaned his head in, aiming to use his forehead to take the blow. Kibo noticed and stopped short before ducking down with a sweeping low kick. Goku lifted his leg, dodging the kick while trying to axe kick the top of Kibo's head. Kibo rolled forward and grabbed Goku's ankle and tripping him up, causing him to be swung back first into the ocean. Swinging Goku back into the air, Kibo jumped up to punch him in the gut. Goku raised his knee and blocked the punch. The two smiled before they began rapidly attacking, while looking for an opening. Goku's fist met Kibo's, their elbows, knees, feet, all smashed into each other, creating massive explosions that echoed throughout the area around them. When they thought they saw an opening, the two went in with everything they had and created shock waves that rang out throughout the entire solar system. "Azure Dragon's Fist," Kibo shouted as another giant manifestation of an azure green dragon shot out as their fist met. "Dragon Wrathful Fist," Goku shouted out as a golden dragon roared back at Kibo's. While the two energy manifestations of the dragons fought, they were tearing each other apart with their claws and teeth, struggling for dominance as they ripped each other apart. Goku and Kibo continued to fight at close range, sending out punch after punch, kick after kick. The two attacked each other without holding back much at all. Goku grinned as he shouted and turned into a Super Saiyan 4. Kibo scratched his head before saying, "There's a fourth form. You don't know about this one? Man, it's great. At the start, it's 5 times stronger than the previous form," Goku informed as Kibo awed at his energy. "At the start? Yeah, the modifier continuously grows the more you train this form. Right now, Vegeta and I can multiply our base forms by 30,000. Goku rubbed the bottom of his nose with a goofy grin. Well, I certainly don't have that, but I do have this. With a loud shout, Kibo transformed into what he calls his primordial physique transformation. His hair turned back to his usual grey color. His body inflated a bit, and then his hair grew wild and spiky, while the ends of his ponytail shot straight up. Dark grey fur spread across his body, while a tail poked out from his outfit. You haven't mastered that one either. Your hair is supposed to be in base form. Goku shook his head. Good to know, Kibo said as he charged towards Goku. The two met before slamming out with their fists. When their attacks connected with one another, Goku yelled in pain while gripping his hand and hopping around. It hurts, Goku said before blowing on his throbbing hand. Kibo grinned before saying, "Oh, did I mention I have origin god essence flowing through my body? I could have easily beaten you in all your previous forms, but what fun would that be?" Goku grinned before he transformed into a primal Super Saiyan. "Well, at least he's strong," Genji commented. Vegeta nodded his head. "I have to admit, this Kibo guy is good," Goten huffed. "Jealous?" Sheena chuckled. "Nope, you haven't even seen the tip of the iceberg. My dad hasn't even unleashed 1/10 of his potential." Goten shot back as he watched the two charging at each other like rushing bulls. God essence from a high-tier minor god versus Goku's origin ki. Their energies clashed like fire and ice. It was violent and volatile. Kibo slid into Goku's defenses. It was clear why Kibo had the advantage at the moment, as he was still using his origin god essence. However, he was impressed by how powerful Goku was. Even without using a godly form of energy to counter his own, Goku was doing rather well. Goku gritted his teeth as took a fierce soaring dragon punch to the bottom of his jaw. Kibo then followed up with a flying knee kick to Goku's chin. Goku's head flew up as he grunted and flipped in the air to reduce the force of Kibo's blow. However, Kibo appeared behind him and performed a front flip kick to the sides of Goku's shoulder. Goku cried out as his body slammed into the ocean. In response to the destructive force of the blow, a geyser shot into the air that managed to reach outer space, freezing into a spire before falling back to the ground as rain. Everyone gasped when they noticed Goku wasn't coming back up. However, after a few seconds passed, bubbles started to form around the surface of the ocean. After a bit, one could see steam rising up surrounded by a red glow. As the top of Goku's red hair breached the surface of the salty waters, Kibo smiled at the power coming from the true Super Saiyan God red form. Goku had a giant grin on his face as he said, "Be careful, I don't want to kill you in this form." Kibo nodded his head before saying, "No worries, I think I can keep up." Kibo clenched his fist and shouted as his power started to rise like crazy. His hair reverted back to his base form style and changed color along with his fur. Kibo's power suddenly soared into the air and caused Goku and the others to flinch by sensing it. The crimson-red god essence spilled out of Kibo's body like crazy. The warrior from another universe then looked up at Goku and said, "Well now, are you surprised?" Goku nodded his head with an overly excited expression. "This is going to be so fun." The two laughed before they charged at one another again. Every time they attacked, the entire cosmos shook. Boom, boom, boom. The sounds from them blocking each other's punches resounded throughout the entire solar system. Goku was starting to look a little strained as the fight got more intense. Kibo then launched his fist out to hit a mere after-image technique. Goku appeared behind Kibo and punched out. Yet to his surprise, when he hit Kibo in the spine, Kibo's body turned into a puff of smoke. "Shadow clone technique," Kibo said from behind Goku. Goku's eyes were wide because even though he could hear and see Kibo standing in front of him, Goku could longer sense his energy. Kibo was trained in the art of stealth and assassination. He could conceal not only his godly essence, but even his very presence. He then smiled before raising his hand. Kibo placed his hand into the shape of a tiger claw and shouted, "White tiger's claws!" All of Goku's battle instincts told him to dodge, and to do it quickly. He jumped forward and turned back around as fast as he could. However, all he saw was a giant outline of a white tiger with black strips roaring out at him. Goku felt a frighteningly sharp force tear across his chest and the sounds of rushing water. Blood sprayed from the 4 jagged cuts that appeared across Goku's chest while ocean below him split open and crashed down like a waterfall before returning to normal. Goku held his chest and felt the blood leaking profusely before he flexed his muscles and forced it to stop. "Wow, what was that?" Goku asked with stars in his eyes. Kibo then stood in another stance that was focused around his legs. He placed his hands behind his back while placing a single foot facing forward and the other to the side. "Blazing Phoenix kick?" Kibo smiled as he jumped towards Goku. As Kibo's legs swept upward, rainbow flames wrapped around it like a boot. Kibo's jump kick was unleashed. The fire lashed in a crescent arc, threatening to burn the very space between them. Goku quickly started to power up his Kamehameha and shot out while the arc of prismatic flames started to encroach upon him. The flames then morphed into the outline of a Phoenix and slammed into Goku's Kamehameha without hesitation. A massive burst of flames pierced through the Kamehameha like a spear and caused the beam to explode in midair. The two were flung back by the force of the attack when Goku suddenly used the instant transmission to appear in front of Kibo. 1K Kamehameha. Goku attacked by combining his newly preferred Kyo-Zenkin technique with a point-blank Kamehameha. After taking some tips from Whis and learning about the difference between Krillin and his own Kaioken's technique, the two worked on perfecting the technique for several months before Goku finally switched over. With the knowledge Goku learned from Kibo's energy manipulation methods, he managed to improve the technique even further, allowing him to reach around 10,000 times before the strain started to tear up his body. He was still a little sore about Vegeta making him read. Goku shouted as the beam attack inflated in size several times, making its way to Kibo with frightening speed, while tearing up the terrain behind it. Black Tortoise Guard. Giant image of Genbu surrounded Kibo. The manifestation roared out as it sunk into its shell and used it to block the 1K Kamehameha. The blast engulfed his body, creating a bubble in the shape of his beam at the front end. However, the blast couldn't even so much as make Kibo budge. Goku's Origin God Ki started to increase as he shouted, "Grand Kaioken times 10K. Once more the beam increased in size and rushed around Kibo's body. While the front end of the beam charged into space, Goku smiled, thinking he must have done some damage with that attack. However, when the smoke cleared, Goku's eyes turned wide as he saw that Kibo's technique was still intact. The tortoiseshell surrounding his body started to crack when Kibo dashed through it and shouted out, "Fury of the 4 sacred beasts." The image of an azure dragon, a white tiger with black stripes, a rainbow phoenix, and a black tortoise spiraled and overlapped around Kibo's arm, turning his arm from the elbow to the fist into a solid and vibrant gold color. The attack was filled with a unique power from Kibo's world, a power called martial intent. The world rumbled around Kibo as the punch was thrown towards Goku. The heroic Saiyan's eyes widened as he felt a sense of dread coming from the attack. Goku then instantly powered up to True Super Saiyan God Blue and blocked the attack with a crossguard. Cosmic level bang. A loud explosion echoed throughout the universe like a bell. The blast sent Goku's defenseless body flying across the sky and around the world a few times. Goku only managed to regain his footing after a solid 30 seconds, stopping over a rocky wasteland. He was about to charge back into the fight, only for him to get besieged by a group of Kibo clones hiding in the shadows. Goku started dodging with every bit of power he had. All 50 of Kibo's clones unleashed all of their most powerful martial arts towards Goku. Seryu's fist. Kibo's clone attacked, causing the space to ripple around them. A perfect image of Seryu formed that looked solid enough to be a living being. The spiral punch hit Goku in the gut and sent him flying back over to the boat. Janbu's tail whip. The surreal image of a giant black tortoise whipped out his tail, causing Kibo's tail to grow scales and become surrounded in death energy. Kibo appeared below Goku and stood on the water before kicking upward. The Genbu's tail followed behind Kibo's attack and knocked Goku into the stratosphere. So strong, Goku thought as he failed to sense Kibo teleporting behind him. Suzaku's blazing storm. The image of the seven-colored phoenix appeared as the clones unleashed a flurry of kicks that were surrounded by the seven-colored flames. The kicks slammed into Goku's back and lit him on fire as he plummeted back into the Earth's atmosphere. Before he crashed into the ocean, Kibo appeared beside his falling body and swung his arm like a whip. Baeko's claws! The image of the white tiger with black strips appeared, swinging their sharp essence with all their ferocious might. Goku's eyes widened as he placed his guard up, protecting his chest and head with his arms. 4 deep gashes spread across Goku's chest and severed the tip of his hair before the Saiyan's body bounced across the ocean's surface like a stone on the water. Goku's face paled as he forced himself to regain balance. "This is crazy. No wonder Vegeta said their techniques far surpassed ours. This attack is clearly much stronger than the variants he used earlier. To think it is actually multiplying his force by millions of times." Goku powered up to true Super Saiyan God Purple and created a perfectly spherical barrier around his body. "Ultimate Shield!" Goku shouted. Watching from the distance, Vegeta noticed that Goku had copied a few of Sero's techniques over the years. The two liked to spar often, so it wasn't that big of a surprise. The purple aura kept out Clone Kibo's attacks when the main body joined in and transformed into a primordial superhuman God Blue. When Kibo joined his clones in the assault, everyone was shocked at how they knocked Goku around like a ball. As Vegeta looked up, he could see that the shadow clones didn't have less energy than Kibo's main body. In fact, it seemed that some of his clones were a bit stronger or faster in some areas. This just ended up confusing Vegeta more. From what he knew about Naruto, to make a clone, they had to divide their energy equally amongst them. "Hey, Foxman! Yeah, you with the whiskers?" Vegeta shouted. Naruto and Boruto looked around with a confused expression before Naruto pointed to himself and asked, "You talking to me or my son?" "Yeah, you explain this. How come Kibo's clones all retain the same power as him? In fact, those clones seem slightly stronger. Explain, now," Vegeta demanded. Naruto scratched his head. "These are Nichan's perma-clones. They can cultivate even after they've been made, so he keeps a small army inside his inner world. Once he casts the jutsu, Kibo has them cultivate back up to full strength or feeds them a full recovery pill." Vegeta's eyes widened. "What happens after he cancels the clones?" "Oh, he gets all the energy, knowledge, and physique training they've cultivated." Naruto grinned. Tien raised his eyebrow and thought that it was somewhat similar to how Grandmaster Tien trains. But Kibo's method seemed way more advanced. They could only increase their ki to match their main body through training. The information transfer was tricky as they had never bothered to focus on 2 different arts at once, and gaining muscle training was impossible. Tien thought that this needed experimentation. Vegeta shook his head. I'll admit this technique is rather impressive." Goku was thinking the same thing. Maybe he could take 1 or 5 of the superhuman God Blue Kibo, but 50 of them. Goku smiled and said, "I don't suppose you can go purple yet." Kibe smiled. "Nope, but I don't need it to take care of you. I still have a few good tricks up my sleeve." Kibo recalled his clones and then powered up using his God mode and 3 stars of Pangor. The energy in his body started to skyrocket as he made a few hand signs and formed his Asura avatar. Pulling out 3 swords for each set of hands, Kibo activated his armor and then summoned his 10 god summons. "Hybrid form!" Kibo shouted. This was a technique Kibo made to recreate the hybrid form that he used to fuse the techniques that eventually lead up to his current God mode technique. He even went so far as to risk sacrificing his own Supreme Killer ability in the hopes of a better technique. And thanks to his almighty system, only Kibo was capable of accessing this unique form. Not even his kids could access this platinum form, known as the God mode. The reason he created the hybrid God art was because once something is offered up to the system to fuse, the materials are gone for good. Normally, Kibo could keep a hard copy of the technique and start from scratch to relearn it. But his hybrid mode was granted by the system, so he could only write down his thoughts on how to do it. Kibo got lucky when Naruto managed to develop the demigod mode from his principles written in the manuals he left alongside the teachings of the beast fusion method, taught by the clan hidden in the dreams. Kibo used demigod mode jutsu as a reference to rebuilding his technique from the ground up. He used the Asura avatar as a medium, and fused the 10 god beasts he had raised inside his inner world, turning them into a powerful set of armor and weapons. The Asura looked like an angelic devil. It had 3 faces, the left one made of gold, the center one made of pure Uran energy that shined with a grey hue, and the one on the right was radiant silver. It had 10 wings. Each pair was made from his golden crow Phoenix, Dante's wings, Virgil's wings, and Seryu's dragon wings. The body was covered in a mixture of azure dragon scales and black tortoise shell pieces. It made the armor the Asura was wearing look skin-tight, similar to how his chaos armor resembled a warframe. A long tail spread from his back, and the once monkey tail was turned into a fierce dragon snake that had 2 different colored eyes, one black, the other white. Beast-like fangs formed around the Asura's lips, claws formed around the avatar's hands and feet. 2 small pointed and curved spikes formed around its elbows and merged into the arm guards. As the 6 arms gripped the 3 blades in its hands, a sharp and frighteningly cold aura that felt like it could stop time threatened to engulf the entire area. Goku was stunned at the 15-foot giant Asura that appeared in front of him. He couldn't even begin to imagine how much power was building up under the surface of Kibo's avatar. Excited, Goku felt ecstatic to fight such a foe and said, "I have to know." Goku powered up to his true Super Saiyan God Green and said, "Come on, show me your best attack." Kaiba smiled. "Okay, you asked for it." Kiba held his hand out and stood in the traditional Iajutsu stance. A wave of sword intent in the shape of tiny little swords bunched together around his blades. The platinum aura erupted from Kibo's body as he said, "God Slayer style, beheading strike." What a very simple stroke, is what everyone thought when they saw Kibo's 6 hands blur and deliver a magnificent movement. A bright light tore out from his drawing motion and disappeared as quickly as it appeared. How can I perceive something so fast to be this slow?" Vegeta thought as the attack seemed to break all the laws of their universe. He saw every move in great detail, leaving a deep impression of insane sharpness. Just staring at the attack felt like their eyes were being cut by blades. Unperturbed by the attack, Whis looked at it in fascination as Weil thought, this must be from the laws from his realm. Normally it would be very hard to use foreign laws in another reality. Is there something more to it? I have heard of those who can use their realm's laws in other realities as long as the 2 realities share something in common on a fundamental level, referring to they are both based on Sun Wukong's journey to the west. Whis looked at Kibo and then thought, wait, could it be? Is he carrying his world's laws inside of him? Has he turned himself into the very nature that grants him godhood? Kibo's attack swung out at Goku's neck. The blade tore through space and time until Goku realized that it was already at his neck. At the very last second, Goku used his ultimate shield technique and barely managed to form a thin layer of energy around his body. The ultimate shield's green aura cracked as the blow sent Goku flying across the sky and right out of Earth's atmosphere. Kibo powered down and returned normal. He then waved his hand and collected an unconscious Goku. "Well then, are you next, Vegeta?" Vegeta grinned. "That fool!" Beerus stepped up. "No, it's my turn." Kibo smiled and said, "Oh, the god of destruction, I'm curious as to how you add up to my power." Beerus smiled. "Oh, don't be. It won't take me long to finish you off." Kibo smiled and handed Goku over to an astonished crowd. Goku could have lasted a lot longer and maybe even stood a chance against me eventually. However, he asked for it. The fact that he's still breathing is a bit of a miracle. Kibo then turned to Beerus and gave him a confident grin before boasting, "I still have some neat tricks up my sleeve. I can at least deal with a little kitty cat like you." Beerus's eyes twitched as he sensed a change in the atmosphere around him. Kaibo activated a special ability that gods earn when succeeding in their tribulations, the power to enforce his will into reality, the power of domains. Kibo's almighty domain swept across the skies and enveloped the entire western region of the planet. Inside the altered space, Beerus felt much weaker than normal. Gravity was constantly trying to push him down, and he felt his energy being sapped away by some unknown force. However, instead of freaking out, the god of destruction simply smiled before raising his hand and saying, "Impressive, but Hakai." Kibo's almighty domain suddenly cracked like glass. Blood then shot out of Kibo's mouth as he felt his power over his domain weaken. Biting his teeth, Kibo started to heal the damage and reinforced the domain before Beerus said, "Impressive, you can survive my Hakai. You're not the only one with attainments in destruction, Dao." Kibo rose his hands up and said, "Destroy." A massive blast of destruction energy slammed into Beerus and sent him flying. Kibo powered up, but Beerus suddenly shot out of his attack and punched out at the foreign god. Before he flew too far away, Beerus slammed another punch into Kibo's face that sent him reeling. Kibo felt a stinging sensation against his cheek and profound aching pain in his skull as his brain rattled around. He forced himself to regain his balance and stared at the god of destruction with some surprise. Beerus was covered in bruises and his fur was messed. The blast of destruction Dao Kibo hit him with only seemed to annoy him. The god of destruction's eye twitched as he shouted, "Really? Using destruction energy on a god of destruction? Is your brain made of mush?" Kibo smiled as activated his movement technique, shattering the heavens, breaking the void. The space around Kibo shattered like glass as he appeared beside Beerus, striking him while activating his full-powered form. The platinum Asura wearing god beasts as its armor appeared once more. Beerus raised his finger pointing at his side while not even looking in Kibo's direction. Devastating martial intent flowed out of Kibo's Asura avatar while the laws of destruction roared from Beerus's technique. Kibo drew his swords and shouted, "God-slaying art all in one," as he lowered his 3 swords in unison. A single beam full of sword intent lashed out. If one looked at it with analytical purposes, one could sense the forms of thousands of different swords, styles blended into the attack. Beerus went full-on God of Destruction mode and shouted out, "Destruction Wave Cannon." A massive purple sphere shot out of his finger and like a burning star as it charged towards Kibo's attack. The space around them started to ripple like water. Everyone could sense the frightening energy that would be produced when these two attacks clash. Just before their unleashed attacks met, Whis suddenly appeared between them and slapped them both across the face. Both Kibo and Beerus went limp and started to fall towards the ocean. Shion and Karin appeared in the air and caught Kibo while Whis caught Beerus. Sorry, the fight was getting out of hand. Can't risk the god of destruction destroying things he shouldn't. Whis gave a quick bow. Karin and Shion and the rest of the people from Kibo's world looked utterly shocked at the power of the angel, as did the Z-fighters. Vegeta watched as Whis seated Beerus down next to the dining table and began to eat as if nothing had happened. Kubo was being cared for by his family while they stared at Whis in abject horror. "Who is this guy?" Naruto said while looking particularly freaked out. "To think he can easily defeat Father. What level of power must he be at?" Genji said with a hint of awe. Kibo started to wake up first. When he opened his eyes and saw that Karin was letting him sleep on her lap, Kibo let out a smile and sighed, "I guess that Whis is far stronger than I first thought." Kibo then sat up and bowed his head to Whis before he said, "Thank you for going easy on me. I'm sorry to have troubled you. Please accept this as an apology." Whis let out a soft smile and nodded his head before Kibo pulled out a giant pig-type god beast called the Cloudy Sky Pig. Kibo then cut off its leg and roasted it over a golden fire. Those who knew Kibo used his pill fire to cook the meat, licked their lips in anticipation. The primordial 9-yang pill fire was an alchemical flame. At heart, its purpose lay in making godly pills, but Kibo was using it to cook. The type of pill fire he was using was an extremely nurturing flame. It could purify the most pill toxins and bring out the greatest properties of the herb being used. It was the same for cooking too. The meat that is being cooked was filled with godly essence, and the 9-yang pill fire was sealing the energy inside it, instead of burning it out. A delectable scent spread out from the surface of the roasting meat, causing the unconscious Goku and Beerus to start sniffing the wondrous fragrance. Duels started from the lips of the Dragon Ball universe's main cast. Whis clapped his hands together and waved his upper body side to side as he spoke with a cheerful tone. "What a well-behaved young man. You know how to treat your elders." The angel reached out his hand to accept the meal, when all of a sudden, a still unconscious Goku and Beerus latched onto the piece of meat and tore into it. "Hey, that's mine," Whis said as he waved the hand attached to the bone on the slab of meat. The two gluttonous fellows hung on to the piece of meat with their teeth while being flung around wildly like a fish on a hook. Kibo laughed and started to cook up the rest of the cloudly sky pig. He also pulled out some god-tier herbs and used them as spices. The fragrance spread over the area, making the stomach of even those who have already eaten growl like starving lions. Kibo handed the meals out to the group and said, "Well, this is a party, right? Everyone, enjoy." Vegeta grinned and shook his head as he thought about a warrior like Kibo cooking. Pathetic. Maybe he'd be stronger if he didn't have so many occupations. Cook, pillmaker, crafter, though I suppose an immortal god gets bored of doing the same old thing, Vegeta mumbled under his breath. However, even he, the great Saiyan King, couldn't stop his stomach from growling. After Vegeta took a bite, the expression of sheer enjoy overtook his scowl and forced him to shout, "This is so much better than plain old regular meat." As they ate, a large quantity of pure god essence filled their bones with incredible vitality. A group of people and gods devoured the food joyously while Kibo sat down next to Whis. Vegetas looked at the crowd. Bulma, Vidal, and Chi-Chi were chatting away with the women when suddenly Chi-Chi shouted out in joy, "You're having a babe." Vidal's face was bright red as her secret had been spilled by Shion. "Yes, it will be a little girl with quite the destiny." Vegeta looked over at them and smiled. "I guess Pan will be the first half Saiyan since I cancelled that wish I made all those years ago." Gohan was jumping up and down in joy as he said, "This is great. I'm going to be a father." Ronch grinned. "What does that make me? A second aunt?" "Congrats," Trunks shouted. Ronch, Goten, and Trunks, who were teenagers at this point in time, looked at each other and said, "We're going to be uncles, aunts. We're too young." Bala laughed at them and said, "You're all grandpas and grannies if you account for your time in the timeless training grounds." "That doesn't count. We don't age in there." Trunks rolled his eyes. Goku and Beerus only woke up after they finished eating the cloudy sky pig leg down to the bone. Licking his lips happily, Goku popped up and saw that Kibo was talking to Whis. However, most of his attention was on the food. He couldn't believe his nose. It all just smelled so good. After he started to eat, he walked over to Kibo with a mouth and plate full of Kibo's delicacies before mumbling, "Muffle, so, grumble, it was a good munch fight. Let's chew fight again." Kibo laughed as Vegeta scolded him. "Kakarot, what are you doing? Chew first, speak second." Goku quickly chewed up the food in his mouth and swallowed before shouting, "This is great. Did you cook it?" Kibo nodded his head.
"Yep."
"Can you teach Chi-Chi how you made it?" Goku begged. Chi-Chi appeared behind Goku and coughed in an ominous manner after she questioned, "Do you have a problem with my cooking, honey?" Goku's shoulders jumped as he looked over his shoulder and said, "I think your cooking is the best tasting, but this is just—" Chi-Chi sighed. "I understand. Even I have to admit defeat. This is truly too good to be true. If you want to learn how to cook like me, you need a heavenly flame that nurtures and good materials, aka god-tier produce. The food you are eating came from a god beast known as the cloudy sky pig. It's a creature that has cultivated to godhood and doesn't exist in this world," Kibo explained as he leaned back and relaxed. Closing his eyes under the shade, Kibo continued, "However, if you make a wish for a fridge of infinite god beast and god herbs, as well as a heavenly flame that's perfectly suited for cooking and the method to cultivate the fire that doesn't conflict with the laws of your universe, then I suppose it's possible for me to teach you." Goku had never really used the Dragon Balls for his own purposes because other than a good fight, he desired very little that he couldn't accomplish on his own. But when Goku thought about Kibo's advice, the first selfish wish he wanted suddenly popped into his head. A wish for an infinite food. Why didn't I think of this before? Goku said as he slapped his forehead. Genius! Whis smiled as he thought of all the new goodies he'd get to devour. Infinite food! Yummy! Goten licked his lips. There has never been a more important wish, Trunks grinned. If it's this stuff, I have to agree, Baller said, as she devoted another plate. I want more, Braunch said as she wiped off the grease on her lips with a napkin. Beerus, who was stuffing his mouth, suddenly stopped and said, Goku, go do that. I want to eat this every time I visit. If your wife cooks like him, I'll have a hard time leaving. Chi-Chi gave Beerus a cold, scolding look as she said, I'm not your wife? The only man I cook for is my kids and Goku. If you want to eat my food, you'll eat on my schedule and not yours. Beerus's ears folded back. Listen, woman. Chi-Chi growled back at him with fire in her eyes. What? Do you think that because you are a god that you can just bully me? If you even try anything, I'll sick my Goku on you, Chi-Chi bravely declared while she waved a frying pan around from behind Goku's shoulder. Goku laughed as he said, Sorry, Beerus, but you heard my wife. Try anything funny, and I'll put you down. You'll do what now? Beerus questioned with his finger tapping his crossed arms. Hey, don't mess with us. Who will cook or prepare meals for you then? Bulma chuckled. Kibo chuckled as he saw the fearless Chi-Chi berating the god of destruction. Okay, that's enough of that, Whis shook his head. He didn't want to lose such delicacies to Beerus's temper. Beerus growled and thought, what the hell is wrong with these earthling-born Saiyan women? Kaibo turned to Vegeta and said, So, what do you guys do for fun around here? Vegeta grinned and said, We could finish that fight we started all those years ago. Kaibo smiled before pointing to Whis while saying, Sure, not an issue for me, but I think we should find a better place to fight. Whis waved his hand and said, Well, you can't use the timeless training grounds anymore. If you attempted to go all out now, your powers would destroy the foundation of the wish that created it. Vegeta scratched his head and said, I guess it's about time that I upgrade that place anyways. Kibo blinked with a confused expression before he asked, You haven't found the Super Dragon Balls yet? Everyone looked at Kibo and said, Super Dragon Balls? Wait, there are more Dragon Balls out there. What makes them super? Bulma asked. Kibo laughed. Yes, it's also the reason I came here. Hey! I asked a question, Bulma fumed. Vegeta looked at Kaibo with a funny expression before asking, You want to use the Super Dragon Balls? What for? Hey! Quit ignoring me. What do you mean by Super Dragon Balls? Bulma and the rest were shouting. Kibo laughed and then created an image of the Super Dragon Balls that floated over everyone's heads. These are the Super Dragon Balls. They were made by the Namekian dragon god Zalama a very long time ago. However, this set of Dragon Balls are the sizes of small planets, and unlike the Dragon Balls you know of, these don't have a limit to the wish it can grant. Everyone was more than shocked. With wide eyes, Bulma turned to Vegeta and asked, You knew about this? Vegeta nodded his head while saying, Yes, but it wasn't important at the time. Vegeta then turned back to Kibo and said, What do you want with the Super Dragon Balls? Kibo smiled and said, Well, I have my own, but it appears that Zalama put restrictions on my Dragon Balls, so they can only make wishes that match my own power. Everyone was shocked to hear Kibo had his own Super Dragon Balls. Piccolo was even more surprised when Kibo was speaking of the Dragon God as if he knew him. You speak as if you've seen him. I haven't seen him, but I've felt his presence, Kibo replied, thinking back to when he obtained the Super Dragon Balls. So you want to remove the limit on your Dragon Balls? Vegeta questioned. Kaibo shook his head and answered simply, No. He then summoned out his karmic ties, the very strings of fate that are attached to everything and everyone. Grabbing onto a polluted string of karma, black smoke began wrapping around Kibo's hand when flowing up from the tainted string of fate. As he channeled some of his godly power, Kibo revealed the cursed tracking marker on his karma, allowing everyone to see it with their own eyes. A very powerful god has tagged me with this horrid thing. It's a curse mark of sorts. I want to wish this away. As long as I'm in this universe, I should be able to use the Super Dragon Balls to wash away the marker. Kibo mentioned while shaking his head downward. A god more powerful than you exist in your universe? Vegeta said with wide eyes. Yep, in fact, I'm only a minor god. You see, there are 9 levels of godhood in my universe. Kibo then went on to explain that in his world was a heavenly plane full of all the pantheons from various religions. There were countless gods that roamed that plane. Whis was particularly interested in hearing of the other pantheons. After listening to his story, the blue-skinned angel spoke with an inquisitive expression. To think such powerful beings exist. You say you're a minor god. It's far below the same level as an anointed god, but it's equal to a god candidate. Whis looked over Kibo with interested stare and said, vitality levels, good. Physique level, also a pass. No complaints about the energy he uses either. Yep, you're a god candidate level for sure. God candidate? Kibo raised a brow. Whis nodded his head and explained, yes, just like you, there are levels for mortals. First is the most basic, mortal level. Second is Earth level, which can decide the fates of entire solar systems. Frieza is a good example of an Earth level talent. Heaven level can decide the entire fate of a galaxy. I believe young Buller is at that level now. Base form Buller is around the level Super Saiyan 3 Goku during the Bua arc, and Frieza never trained, so he's still just as weak as he was on Namek Saga. Whis pointed to Goku and Vegeta. As for further levels, the cycle repeats. Mortal God, Earth God, and Heaven God. Ascenders like Vegeta and Goku are considered to be below God candidates by just a few levels. However, with their Super Saiyan God ability, that's an entirely different story. It allows them to act as a pseudo-God candidate level of strength. Though if they ever get their base forms up to Heavenly God, they may be able to overcome the barrier between the level of God candidate. Whis then pointed to Beerus. When we first met, Beerus was at the peak of God candidate level. After becoming an anointed god, however, Whis stared at Beerus with a disappointed expression and shook his head, sighing as he said, just thinking of Beerus in his youth was quite something. Whiz's glare was beginning to burn a hole through Beerus's head. Good Lord, how did someone so studious become so lazy? What? I achieved immortality. That was my goal. The job that comes with it is just bothersome. Once I master Ultra Instinct, I'll retire after becoming a true god. Beerus shouted, making Kibo more confused. Whis chuckled before informing the group. Once one becomes an anointed god, they can get a free pass to avoid godly tribulations. However, they have to master Ultra Instinct to retire. I guess the immortality granted by the will of the universe has spoiled Beerus. He's gotten so much weaker in recent years. Whis then turned back to the 2 strongest Saiyans. That's why I'm glad you met Goku and Vegeta. Having them around forced you into some intense workouts. Who cares how slow I achieve my goal? Besides, I just haven't had anyone good to challenge me. Who can get worked up over fighting a weakling? Chris shouted out in complaint. Kibo laughed before he asked, so, is a true god stronger than an anointed god? Not necessarily. To become an anointed god is to become part of this universe and its laws. Even if Beerus becomes a true god and gives up his position, he will lose a great deal of power in the process. Whis tilted his head to the side, pondering before he continued explaining, though if he continues his training, I suppose he could eventually surpass the power of a true god. Kibo nodded his head and then mentioned how the power rankings add up in his world. The strongest person I know of is my mother. She is something called a profound god, a level which is above all father-mother ranking. I wonder how you stack up against the profound god ranking. As Kibo mentioned that Nua was his mother, Whis showed a strange expression. The angel scratched his head as he tried to think, Nua, now where have I heard that name before? Shaking his head, Whis thought, odd. How can I find her name familiar? Whis then closed his eyes and thought, it is as if I'm not permitted to know her history. Kibo continued to talk about his world when Vegeta suddenly sent a mental message to Kibo. Well, it should be close to the time when Champa pays us a visit. Your chance to make your wish will come soon enough. Vegeta then walked over to Kibo and spoke out loud. You're more than welcome to stay until your chance arrives. Kibo smiled and nodded his head before responding, Thanks, I'll take you up on your offer, but where can I stay? You can come live with us. We have more than enough room. If you want, we can even let you all use our spare houses, Vegeta said, bragging about how rich his family was. Goku then said, I see what you're doing, Vegeta. If he lives with you, you can fight him any time. Kibo, come stay at my place. My dojo has hundreds of rooms. Kibo held his hand out before he shook his head and said, I'm fine on my own, actually. I can make a place to live at anywhere. There must be some nice unowned islands around here somewhere. Kibo then flew up and sent his senses running across the surface of the planet. Smiling, Kibo found a small piece of land on an island in the shape of an eye. At the center of the island was a large hill that had a flat top with around 100 feet in all directions. Kibo raised a hand and cut open the space in front of him with the tip of his finger. On the other side of the opening, a large hill popped into view as Kibo said, I'll be living here for now. After waving his hand, a decent-sized house appeared at the center as Kibo used a raise to set up the house's sewage, electricity and water systems. Seeing him work his magic, everyone, including Whis, was intrigued. Vegeta, however, showed a confused expression. He was sharp enough to notice Kibo was using his jutsu without hand signs. Why did you use hand signs in battle when you can use your powers without them? Vegeta asked. Kibo smiled as he walked through the portal. 2 reasons. First, because it increases my focus and even improves the power of the technique. Secondly, because it just looks so damn cool. Vegeta watched Kibo leave and shook his head as the portal closed behind him. The King of the Saiyans then turned to the God of Destruction and snickered before saying, So you're naturally lazy? Beerus scoffed at Vegeta and said, Nonsense. Whis chuckled at Vegeta's comment before saying, If you don't want to be called lazy, you should do something to fix your bad habits. Beerus grunted and grumbled as he and Whis started to fly into the air. Thank you for the feast. As usual, we appreciate all the trouble you go through for us, Bulma. See you next time, Whis said as he began transporting Beerus back to his castle. Vegeta then grinned as he said, Well, now that they are finally gone, Bulma, can you make a radar capable of scanning entire solar systems? Bulma grinned and held up a thumb as she had the ship's captain turn around back towards the shore. Vegeta smiled and started to fly up. I have something to settle with Kibo. I will be back shortly. Bulma was shouting orders just before she gave Vegeta a stern look and said, Be back before dinner. It's still my birthday, and you know how I want to spend the rest of it. Vegeta blushed a bit while he nodded his head in confirmation and took off. Bulma then took their family back home while Vegeta headed out towards Kibo's new house. When he arrived, he could hardly recognize the small plot of land that saw before Kibo stepped through his portal. The small island was covered in large, immortal trees and herbs that Kibo planted for fun. The house he built was a massive-looking Japanese-styled mansion on the top of the singularly large hill, and it was built in the very center of the eye-shaped island. After scanning over the land, Vegeta found Kibo's family and friends unpacking, while the god from another reality was fishing on a newly constructed dock. Kibo was sipping an ice-cold beer while he relaxed on a lawn chair covered by a sun parasol. Vegeta landed next to him and looked him over before saying, You look ridiculous. Kibo looked at his attire and smiled. He was wearing loose tan-colored shorts, a well-made straw hat, and a Hawaiian t-shirt. What? I'm on vacation? Bad man. He. Vegeta growled. I have never worn that shirt. Kibo continued to laugh and followed up after taking another sip of his beer. I want to finish our fight, Vegeta claimed as he crossed his arms. Kibo threw his fishing line into the ocean and said, I'm on vacation right now. Can't this wait until after the Universal Tournament? Vegeta shook his head. No, and I won't be taking it easy on you like Kakarot. I see he's still slow to start, Kibo said, as another beer appeared in his hand. If he had gone full power from the start, maybe that battle would have ended much sooner than you think, Vegeta mentioned as he started flying upward. But we have nowhere to fight, Kibo announced before taking a few sips of his beer. What about that inner world of yours? Vegeta said with a sly smirk on his face. Kibo pursed his lips as he paused for a second. He then set the beer down and he let out a sigh before saying, "Okay, but don't blame me for what happens." Kibo pulled Vegeta into his inner world and took the Saiyan by surprise. He scanned his surroundings and thought, just what is this place? It's at least 10 times the size of Earth. There were massive mountains, forests, a glorious ocean that extended out into the horizon. There were even entire cities full of Tao beasts that had obtained human forms. The only thing missing from this place was a starry sky. At the center of the inner world's equator was a large and massive tree that had 12 unique orbs of light floating over a golden and silver lake. Inside each of the lights were energies containing fierce powers of Lu. As the 12 laws orbited the tree, Vegeta noticed that everything on this planet was a treasure. At the edges of the pool of extreme yin and yang were 5 pieces of bark that seemed to be growing into trees at an extremely slow pace. Small branches formed from the piece of bark and had a few leaves budding on them. Vegeta could sense frighteningly powerful energies coming from the saplings, and he even recognized what they could possibly be. The sky was in a state of constant twilight. The small sun on the horizon was actually a giant life form known as the 3-legged golden crow, and the silver moon to Vegeta's back was another life form known as the world bear. Vegeta also sensed the other minor gods and some familiar faces from other continuities. Dante and Virgil from Devil May Cry were owners of their very own cities. The 4 sacred beasts from legends had massive lands and castles surrounded by their fellow kin. A giant wolf known as Fenrir had an enormous forest that was next to a giant monkey that had a similar presence as the Saiyans. The biggest thing he noticed was the dense and foreign god essence saturating the entire planet. While Vegeta's jaw was dropped, Kiba smiled in response, throwing his arms out in a presenting manner as he said, "Welcome to my inner world." Vegeta looked at Kiba and said, "It's impressive." Kiba smiled back with a proud expression and said, "Thanks." Vegeta was still taking in the sights as he said, "This must have taken you some time to complete." Kiba nodded his head. "Yeah, I'm an old man now, in my early 60s. Vegeta grinned. "Why? Didn't you use the Dragon Balls to alter your time chamber?" Kiba lifted a brow. "Of course I did. It's one of the best places to train back in my universe." Vegeta laughed as he said, "I created a whole new time chamber. I call it the Timeless Training Grounds. It's like a world unto itself. The biggest boon, though, is the fact that as long as one enters the Timeless Training Grounds, they will be granted eternal youth for as long as they stay." Kibo tilted his head and said, "Ha! I'm an idiot. Why didn't I think of that?" "Probably because you are already immortal," Vegeta commented. Kibo tilted his head. "It appears that I have one more wish to make when I get back." Vegeta then said, "So where do we fight?" Kibo pointed up and said, "The space outside my central planet, of course. I have a few techniques to help me fight in a vacuum." "What about you?" Vegeta said as he started to fly up. Kibo grinned as he followed Vegeta and said, "You don't need to worry about air. This is my inner world. Of course, you can breathe in space here as long as I will it." Vegeta frowned and flew even quicker. When he got to the outer atmosphere, Vegeta couldn't deny that he was very tempted to continue holding the sphere of air that he sealed around himself with ki. Kiba saw the thick membrane of oxygen and said, "Hey, that's a great idea for spacefaring combat. I wonder why Akira Toriyama never thought of this. It's pretty simple too. All you need to do is teleport back to an air-rich planet to refill your oxygen supply." Vegeta smiled. Seeing Kibo speak in space made him relax as he took a deep breath and said, "Well, I can actually breathe out here. What a strange place." Kibo looked at Vegeta with eyes that could see through anything and replied, "You know, that empty space you've been building inside of your soul is kinda similar to my inner world." Vegeta held out his hand and pulled out a simple pot of senzu beans. "It's called a pocket space. The Yardratians taught it to me. One has to control spiritual energy to form a cube of folded space. Once the core is built, I can continue folding that space over and over again, increasing the space inside, but it takes time as a literal exchange. You exchange time for space. Neat. I wonder if you can build a world inside that space, though right now it's even smaller than a fragmented world, Kibo said, angling his head to the side with a pondering expression. Vegeta shook his head. Enough of that, let's fight. Kibo held his hand up and said, wait, why don't you use that nirvanic rebirth pill first? Vegeta lifted a brow before he pulled out the pill from his pocket space. He then opened the jade vase and caused the god essence to spill out into the open. Vegeta breathed it in and felt it strengthening his blood cells as he said, so this is the power of alchemy. Interesting. Kibo egged him on. Come on, I'm waiting. A vein on Vegeta's forehead showed his loss of patience. He was a little reluctant at first, but thinking back on his own history, since he ate the Tree of Might, Vegeta felt that taking this pill would be no different. It's just another supplement to aid his training. Tossing one of the pills into his mouth, Vegeta was instantly surprised because it melted on contact and sent a surge of pure energy rushing into his body. Vegeta's bones felt like they were starting to boil. He could feel the pill's medicinal properties invading the particles inside his blood. Suddenly, the Saiyan King's skin started to exude a pitch-black smoke from his pores. Gasping for air, Vegeta noticed that his entire body was vibrating with incredible power. The pain was enough to make any man go insane. However, Vegeta pushed through it, gritting his teeth the entire way. Veins began pulsating across his body, the flesh of the Saiyan King turned bright red and his temperature skyrocketed. Vegeta then let out a fierce yell as he recoiled from the pain, rolling on the ground back and forth for a few minutes. The black smoke rapidly gushed out his body faster than ever before. It didn't stop until Vegeta suddenly felt a warm and cooling sensation beginning to spread throughout his stomach, or more accurately, his ki center. He couldn't help but let out a moan of pleasure. He went from severe pain to completely relaxed and comfortable in an instant. When Vegeta felt the last of the smoke had cleared away, his skin and bones fluctuated like a ripple on a pond. Suddenly, Vegeta's body made a crisp noise, like ice was shattering off of a solid surface. Opening his eyes, Vegeta's eye color was slightly golden yellow and his pupil was a very deep black color. It was as if he accessed the legendary Super Saiyan's Akari form. But unlike Broly, he wasn't buffed up and it was permanent, without the madness side effect. Vegeta looked at his hands and gripped his fists. Incredible, I haven't gained any strength, but my body feels like it's overflowing with energy. Kaibo smiled and then pulled out his sword and armor. After equipping them, he activated his full power mode and sent waves of god essence rippling throughout his inner world. Vegeta grunted as he felt the foreign god's energy pounding against his skin. It felt like millions of needles pricking away at his body. However, Vegeta could only smile in anticipation as he powered up to his full power. Once again, the force of the true Super Saiyan God green form showed its appearance. Vegeta's power erupted into a typhoon of emerald green godly origin ki. The two powers clashed against one another and caused all of the citizens on Kibo's inner world to look out in excitement. Lord Kibo is fighting, a golden crow chick said as it chirped loudly. Interesting. A Nephilim spoke as he sat on top of his house. Looks like we got a show on our hands, a fire dragon roared. Vegeta shook his head and said, I'm not like Kakarot. I won't hold back. Vegeta flew out with everything he had and punched out while shouting, Great Ape's Fist. The image of a golden Uzaru roared out from behind Vegeta. The dominating pressure pushed down on Kibo, who only grunted in response before unsheathing his sword. God-slaying art. One-shot kill. The sheathing of his swords exploded with intense martial intent, creating a giant vacuum of air alongside it. The force from Kibo's action pulled Vegeta's charging body closer to him with even greater speed than before. Vegeta noticed Kibo's plans and knew that he was up to no good. If Vegeta crashed into him even quicker than he planned, Kibo could magnify the damage of his attack by using his own force against him. Vegeta roared as he didn't back down from the challenge. Kai Kokoro Ken times 5,000. Vegeta's attack lashed out, turning into a great ape fist that slammed downward at Kibo. Like a flash of lightning, Kibo's blade slashed out and met with Vegeta's attack. The two attacks clashed, causing the space around them to ripple like water. A second later, a massive explosion rocked the entire space of the inner world. The clouds below them ripped apart in a massive circle that could be seen from the moon. Kibo and Vegeta then suddenly made their move. Their bodies turned into blurs as countless shockwaves emanated from their strikes. They appeared and disappeared several times and clashed with each other using all their skills. Fist versus sword, the two fought fiercely and made the spectators cheer with excitement. Kiba swung his life-bound sword, Oblivion, in a diagonal direction while aiming at Vegeta's neck. Vegeta tilted his head slightly to the side and avoided it by a mere inch, only feeling a few strands of his hair fall as he succeeded in dodging. Kibo saw Vegeta throw a punch towards his face, when suddenly Kibo quickly changed direction, aiming his blade towards Vegeta's punch. Vegeta then countered by pulling back his fist just before it hit the surface of Kibo's blade and spun inward while aiming a kick towards Kibo's ribs. Kibo halted his attack halfway and ducked down to roll underneath Vegeta's kick while re-aiming his sword towards his leg. Vegeta surrounded his leg with a dense and overwhelming amount of Origin God Ki and sped up a back kick. Their attacks clashed and sent each other flying backward. Kibo gripped his wrist as he felt the vibrations from Vegeta's kick run through his sword and into his arm. Vegeta flew back a few dozen feet, only to notice a large gash on the bottom of his foot, leaking blood. The Saiyan King stared down Kibo and smiled. "Fun, but why don't you pick up the pace and use that Asura thing? Come at me with full power, as you did in your fight with Kakarot." Kibo smiled and said, "Now, the fight's just started. How about I show you some cool god arts instead?" Kibo made a dozen hand signs before he raised his hand to his mouth and shouted, "Breath of the Star God." Purple and gold flames shot out of Kibo's mouth and covered the sky in an ocean of fire. Vegeta quickly backed up and tried to create some distance between him and the flames. However, the fire seemed to have a mind of its own. The goldy fires chased after Vegeta several times, attempting to engulf his whole body in scorching plasma. Vegeta continued to speed up constantly, but the flames always seemed to be moving faster. By teleporting large distances away multiple times in a row, he was able to stay out of reach. However, each time he escaped, the flames rushed to his side once again. Realizing this wasn't getting him anywhere, Vegeta powered up to the limit of his strength and punched out wildly. The moment the Saiyan attacked the fire, holes appeared in the flames in the shape of his spinning fists. However, a clone of Kibo appeared behind Vegeta and swung down with Oblivion in an attempt to cleave him in two. The sword traversed from the top of his neck to the bottom of his chest. In the heat of the moment, Vegeta reacted without thinking. A split body formed out from Vegeta's front and countered the blow by taking the hit. The clone was split in two before being turned into pure energy and flowing back into Vegeta's body. Another Kibo clone appeared and made a dozen hand signs before shouting, "Fire Sword God's Array." The gold and white flames surrounding the two fighters before it circled Vegeta in a very peculiar manner. The fires then lined up in an orderly fashion and formed into a giant array of glyphs and symbols. Vegeta suddenly felt the temperature skyrocket while his skin turned red, his blood boiled, and his bones began to dry up. The clones vanished, returning to their cultivation caves, while the real Kibo appeared above the center of the array. He then struck down with a blinding draw so fast that both time and space seemed to warp around the edge of his sword. All of the flames gathered by the array focused at the center of Kibo's sword stroke. The godly fire took the shape of a massive sword and merged into his swinging blade, adding powerful sword intent into his attack. The power of the fires roared to life as Kibo shouted, "God-slaying art, immolation sword, God's wrath." Kibo's sword beam blasted out towards Vegeta's midsection alongside Oblivion's sharp edge. Vegeta reacted in an instant. He toughened up his body while shouting, "Adamantium skin spell." The spell that Vegeta used was a fusion of all the defensive spells he collected throughout his life. His ultimate defensive spell, Adamantium Skin. The spell caused Vegeta's entire body to harden to the point that a steel-like sheen glimmered off of his skin. Every blood cell, nerve and muscle, all transformed into an insanely durable metal that would give Kachin, the hardest known steel in the universe, a run for its money. Vegeta punched out with everything he had and pushed his Kaikokoro Ken to its limits. Thanks to learning a few of Gogeta's methods from Whis, combined with what he had learned from Kibo's methods, Vegeta managed to break the limit on his Kokoro Ken spell. The downside to the advancement was Vegeta had to make a choice. He could choose a ridiculous mana drain that would eat up 10% of his total mana per second, or he could allow his body to take a burden in exchange for a lower mana consumption of 10% of his mana per second. Its new limit was a bit higher than Goku, allowing him to reach 12,500 times his current power. Not even Goku had managed to break the 10,000 times method. Yet, this was Vegeta's new ace in the hole for fighting Kibo and his rival. Adding in his adamantium flesh, his body was able to handle far more strain than ever before. Vegeta's power and defense skyrocketed to a point where not even he was sure what his full power was capable of. The two slammed into each other with their full strength when Vegeta suddenly felt pain and backed off by teleporting away. Metal wasn't a good choice. Fire can both support and destroy that element, Kibo grinned as he watched Vegeta appear a few dozen feet away. Purple and gold flames singed Vegeta's hand as he stared at Kibo in awe. Steel blood dripped through his embered metallic skin as Vegeta thought, "If I had stayed in contact any longer, no doubt my skin will turn into slag." Looking over to see if he did any damage, Kibo barely budged. He was a little scuffed up from the collision, but mostly unharmed. Vegeta laughed as he healed his wound with a full heal. He then roared out as his aura surged into the heavens. "Uzaru's great fist? Absolute zero punch!" Vegeta yelled as he charged forward. Ice magic intertwined with Vegeta's ki. The ape image appeared behind him once more. However, this time the energy construct's fur was a light bluish-white color. Vegeta was surrounded by a whirlwind of icy fragments as his punch slammed into Kibo's stomach. The icy aura combated against Kibo's flames and sent him flying out into the void once more. Vegeta flew after and continued to pound against Kibo's body dozens of times. Every time Kibo was hit, his body was shrouded in ice that felt like it could freeze hell itself. Kubo's body suddenly stopped flying back as he suddenly grabbed Vegeta's fist and swung out his blade towards Vegeta's neck. Vegeta raised his free hand and shouted, "Big Bang Collapse." Kibo quickly let go as he saw the pitch-black Big Bang attack collapsing gravity into a single point. Kibo then made a few one-handed signs before shouting, "Sealing formation." Before Kibo could act, Vegeta unleashed his attack. A large gravity well wreathed in gold lightning took the shape of a beam before it blasted out at Kibo. The massive attack crashed through anything that got in its way. Space, time, Kibo's sealing array, all of it shattered away like glass. Kibo grunted as he waved his hands and released his domain to repair the damage to his inner world. Looking at the cracks in his reality, Kibo unleashed his god essence and let it run rampant in all its fury. The laws in his inner world instantly started to constrict and repress the power of Vegeta's assault. Kibo then activated his Asura Beast God mode, and then attacked by drawing all three of his blades in quick succession. God-slaying art, Overlord Slash. Kibo yelled as he lifted the swords above his head and swung down as if he were trying to split the universe in two. 3 red and black blade beams cut down vertically, merging into one beam that threatened to engulf everything. The attack acted in a similar manner as a black hole did, getting stronger as it absorbed Vegeta's attack. The Saiyan King could do nothing while the black beams, surrounded by a crimson glow, shattered his metallic defenses and sent him flying. The giant Asura avatar suddenly made a series of hand signs as Kibo shouted, "God-slaying art, sword array, eternal pursuit." Kibo's giant swords came alive as they charged towards Vegeta like comets. The swords chased him continued to assail Vegeta, cutting him open several times while he blocked or punched the weapons away. Vegeta's bloodied body was close to death while the situation modifier set in his favorite spell activated. The auto-heal spell toggled on and gave Vegeta's body a full cure before using a regen max spell. The wounds on the Saiyan King vanished, and his skin's steel-like luster returned, even durable than before. Kibo's swords started to cut into Vegeta's flesh as they flew around him like possessed items. Every time Vegeta moved to evade or block, the swords would anticipate his movements and strike a grievous blow to Vegeta. Cut and healed over and over again, Vegeta's body started to grow stronger for every wound he suffered. Thanks to being a Super Saiyan Green, the Zenkai boosts he was receiving were constantly improving his base form. As his mana grew stronger, the durability ratio on his adamantium skin started to raise with it. With the rebirth of his fleshly body, Vegeta's potential was undergoing a massive evolution. It was like coal being pressed into a diamond. The pressure from Kibo's power started to force Vegeta to reach an entirely new plateau of power. As time slowly passed by, Vegeta started to dodge Kibo's blades. He closed his eyes and withdrew all of his power into his center. Vegeta showed a calm and peaceful expression as the power of his true Super Saiyan God Green started to dim. Vegeta then suddenly reverted into his base form. His body began emanating an intense heat, while a bluish aura erupted around him. His power skyrocketed as he let out a shout that shook Kibo's inner world. Kibo withdrew his weapons and saw that Vegeta had entered the Ultra Instinct Omen stage. The Saiyan's hair waved from the heat created by the technique, and white steam rose alongside a bluish aura that pushed Kibo back. "It's kind of like my martial intent," Kibo noticed as he examined Vegeta's current state. Vegeta opened his eyes. His yellow irises shifted to silver before they glowed with incredible power. Vegeta gave Kibo one last focused stare before he moved. It happened faster than Kibo could react. While in his Asura avatar, Vegeta appeared next to it. To Kibo, it looked like a pea-sized object that was about to send out a punch that could destroy an entire universe. "Great Ape's Fist," Vegeta roared out as the fist from the manifestation of his golden Uzaru came lashing up on Kibo's Asura avatar. With a swift uppercut to the avatar's chin, Vegeta sent Kibo flying into the distance, knocking him a few miles away in an instant. His godbeast Asura avatar cracked like glass as his armor, while his sword cried out in pain. Kibo withdrew his god-tier gear and suddenly made over 100 hand signs in less than a second. "I'm warning you now, Vegeta. I haven't perfected this art yet, so don't die on me." Kibo then made a final hand sign in the shape of a circle before shouting, "Condense." The beast god Asura avatar started to shrink. It went from 50 meters to 25 in almost an instant. As it got smaller, Kibo wrapped himself in martial intent while the Asura avatar's eyes glowed with murderous rage, compressing itself even further. When the Asura reached 10 meters, its energy shot into the sky like a pillar of light that could be seen from distant space. 9 meters, 8 meters, the Asura avatar continued to condense itself into a small dot of power that felt like it could extinguish the heavens. Kibo wore his avatar like a piece of armor. All of its power was sealed inside a thin membrane around his skin, true Asura beast god avatar. Vegeta looked at Kibo in surprise, almost falling out of his focused state. Vegeta calmed his mind as he started to walk towards Kibo. Kibo responded in kind. As they walked towards one another, they created ripples in the space surrounding their approach. Like magnets being attracted to one another, the two warriors flew into combat without wasting any more time. "Fists of the four sacred beasts," Kibo punched out. The images of the four sacred beasts appeared and coiled around Kibo's fist before he punched out. "Dragon Ape God's Raging Fist," Vegeta punched out. The image of a scaled ape appeared behind him, his power inflating like crazy as their fists met. Suddenly, massive explosions of godly force rippled out like world-ending tidal waves. The two began exchanging blows at incredible speeds. Punch after punch, kick after kick, the two caused havoc on the stability of Kibo's inner world. Kibo gritted his teeth as blocked Vegeta's assault and found an opening. With a fierce step inward, all 6 of Kibo's arms punched Vegeta in the stomach like a Gatling gun. Vegeta's body took some damage as he recoiled and quickly punched Kibo in the face. While Kibo's head leaned back, he went with the flow and did a backflip, landing a kick with the tip of his foot to Vegeta's chin. The blow sent the Saiyan King reeling through the air like a pinwheel lost in the wind. While he was spinning around, Vegeta powered up a blast and forced himself to stop in midair as he shouted, "Final crash!" Spheres of lightning and fire formed in each hand, combined as he slammed his wrists together and shot off a powerful beam of plasma-based Origin God Ki. Kibo powered up a giant ball of energy in the shape of a Rasengan above his head before saying, "God, slaying art, heavenly sword beam." The giant sphere of God essence suddenly transformed into a giant golden sword that threatened to cut all of existence. Kibo then threw his hand out as the golden sword beam charged towards Vegeta's attack. The sword slammed into Vegeta's final crash, causing a massive explosion to engulf the two warriors. Kibo's golden sword began piercing through the beam and slowly approached Vegeta's outstretched arms. "Damn it!" Vegeta grunted as he released control over his blast and teleported behind Kibo. With a powerful Gallic Buster, Vegeta blasted Kibo's back with a point-blank full-force attack. In response, Kibo raised his essence to its maximum output and took the full brunt of the blast. A massive explosion cracked the surrounding space, dealing considerable damage to Kibo as he spat out a mouthful of blood and dropped towards the surface of his inner world. While he fell, Kibo quickly channeled the dynamic core of his healing gate. A mysterious green pearl floating over a green lotus spurted out an endless mist of energy for Kibo to absorb and heal himself. As his body repaired, Kibo grew stronger and shouted, "Law of the sword!" Suddenly, a gleaming platinum sword formed in front of Kibo. The sword contained all of his martial intent and knowledge of sword Tao. The sword, comprised of universal laws, rippled with unimaginable power. Kibo grabbed the blade's handle as a stream of sword intent fused with godly essence. His aura roared into the sky as a response to his touch, and with all of his strength, Kibo swung the blade at Vegeta's midsection. Vegeta didn't shy away, making his own version of a sword beam out of his origin ki. A large ki blade around his flat hand and stretched out as he put more power into it. Vegeta then swung his arm out with a whip-like motion, putting all of his power into the attack. A loud explosion echoed out from the source of the impact. It was clear who the winner was when Vegeta flew out of the explosion, revealing the large gash that had appeared across his chest. Even with his recovery spells on full throttle, it was only healing the wound at a very slow pace. Vegeta flicked his wrist as his body flew back a few feet before regaining his balance. The Saiyan's broken energy sword that remained scattered around in the aftermath of the explosion turned into needle-sized fragments and were flung towards Kibo in a swarm-like formation. The needles pierced through Kibo's skin and created a loud bang as it collided with his bones. The ones that passed through his organs shot out the back of his body, carrying with them large amounts of blood. The two didn't even wait for their bodies to heal the damage. They charged towards each other and started to exchange blows with a fierce display of martial arts. Vegeta aimed his fists towards Kibo's head and swung out with a haymaker-style punch. Kibo leaned his upper body forward, dodging under Vegeta's fist while spinning inward and swinging his platinum sword towards Vegeta's gut. Vegeta's punch stopped short before he leaped forward, raising his feet behind Kibo's body and dodging the attack. Then, with his arm tilted slightly, the Saiyan King clenched in the arm furthest from Kibo and spun horizontally, hurling the point of his elbow down towards the top of the foreign god's skull. Kibo dashed to the side with intense speed, dodging the blow before he swung his blade across the left side of Vegeta's shoulder, dragging his blade down towards his back. The image of Vegeta disappeared, exposing that what Kibo just hit was nothing more than an after-image injected with a bit of the Saiyan's Kai. It was far superior to any illusion the old after-image was capable of. It had an almost solid body, and since it carried Vegeta's essence on it, it could fool the senses. Kibo didn't have time to prepare as suddenly a metallic hand pierced through his chest. "Again? Really? Come on. Vegeta!" Kibo shouted. "I feel like we've been here before," Vegeta announced as he removed his fist from Kibo's back. Kibo let out a smile and said, "Wrong, bit different this time." Turning into a puff of smoke, Vegeta's eyes widened as he shouted, "Clone!" Kibo appeared beside Vegeta and suddenly equipped his previously damaged God-tier equipment. Vegeta was surprised to see that Kibo's full armor suit and sword had somehow repaired themselves while they were away. Not only that, they seemed a bit stronger than before. Raising his arms in defense, Vegeta felt Kibo's sword stroke run through his steel-like skin and cleaving through his left arm in the process. However, before it fell off, Vegeta auto full heal spell activated, healing the arm while the Saiyan King punched Kibo in the face with it. Kibo took a hit straight to the center of his glabella. In response to the fierce blow, Kibo's face was flung upward in a violent manner, and his body was sent hurling backward. Blood sprayed out of the cracks formed in Kibo's armor. However, before Vegeta could celebrate, he also noticed that Kibo's sword, Oblivion. Around the same time he got in the punch, Kibo had thrust the curved sword underneath his collarbone. He looked down and noticed the tip of the blade was a few inches away from piercing his neck. He was about to pull Oblivion out when the sword suddenly made a move on its own. A small, chibi version of Kibo popped out the sword and continued to fly towards Vegeta's vitals. Vegeta punched the sword, cutting through his own collarbone before sending it flying with a spinning kick. His blood spilled across the void while small cracks formed on the surface of Oblivion. As the item spirit howled in pain, Kibo appeared in front of Vegeta and grabbed his blade out of the air. Pouring his god essence into his gear, the sounds of hammers were echoed out while Vegeta focused on the strange aura surrounding Kibo's body. Looking closely, the aura was made of tiny hammers formed by Kibo's intent. The form of intent was injecting Kibo's god essence into the items while they smacked against the surface of their bodies. Within seconds, Kibo's weapon and armor healed completely before he chopped down at Vegeta's face. Other than the sword in his hand, the two copies of Oblivion were being swung around on autopilot, while the remainder of his Asura form's hands and feet focused on melee. Kibo turned into a bloody hurricane. As he swung, chopped, slashed, punched, and kicked at Vegeta, he constantly pushed his foe further and further away. The Saiyan King dodged the attacks by a few inches and slowly made his way through the barrage of attacks like he was taking a stroll through the park. Once he got in range, Vegeta punched out towards Kibo's throat. Kibo used one of his free hands and met Vegeta's force with his own. While the two clashed, Kibo swung down with one of his blades and sent a gash across Vegeta's chest. The second sword ran across his back in a downward stroke while the third flew across his stomach with a piercing jab from the side. Vegeta groaned in pain as he pushed back Kibo's fist and roared with all his might. Big bang explosion. A massive star-sized key sphere formed in his free hand before it shrank to the size of a pea and detonated, letting off a gargantuan explosion. The explosion caused a massive rupture to appear in the space of Kibo's inner world. As the concussive force shook both fighters down to their bones, Kibo and Vegeta coughed up a mouthful of blood, stopping their movements dead in their tracks as stared at each other. The wounds on Vegeta's chest and back were slowly healing when Kibo said, "Not bad, but the real fight starts now." Kibo suddenly shouted out and his power began to grow rapidly. Kibo's power exploded outward as he shouted, "Kyoken times 100. Vegeta flew towards Kibo with a calm expression on his face as he launched out his most powerful strike, Yamata Gallic Buster. Kibo withdrew his blade into his sheath as he launched his two most powerful moves in succession. God-slaying art, all in one. A single sword beam launched out containing all of Kibo's attainments in sword arts. Turning his blade upright, Kibo gripped the handle of his sword and slashed downward while shouting, "God-slaying art, one in all." Millions of blade beams full of a single sword art or stroke flew towards Vegeta in a flurry. The countless one-in-all blade beams surrounded the all-in-one slash before turning into a massive tidal wave of sword intent. Consecutive Tetra Cannon, Vegeta shouted as 10 spheres of his godly origin ki was imbued with the strength of his most powerful fire, lightning, ice, and earth spells. With a wave of Vegeta's hands in a downward motion, the spheres flew out towards Kibo's attacks. The attacks of the two warriors clashed and sent shockwaves throughout the entire inner world countless times. The denizens of Kibo's inner world stood shocked as they tried to maintain their balance. The power rushing out from the epicenter of the massive explosion was enough to destroy countless stars and solar systems. Yet, the two fighting inside it paid no attention to the devastation it was causing. Blood and sweat spilled down their bodies as they continued to viciously assault each other. Kibo slashed Vegeta across the chest, sending out a spurt of blood and gore. In return, Vegeta broke dozens of Kibo's bones with a few well-placed punches. However, instead of getting weaker for every blow they traded, the two began to grow even stronger. Kibo grew stronger because he had altered his genetics through a special technique, thus acquiring a variant, the Saiyan's Zenkai boost. Vegeta grew stronger by leaps and bounds because he had such a great opponent. On top of his own insane Zenkai, TSSGG power feed loop, and the medicinal effects of the Nirvanic rebirth pill, it was all pushing a frighteningly dense form of future potential into his bones. Vegeta began to adapt to the Ultra Instinct Omen state as he continued to trade blows with Kibo. The Saiyan King felt that he was getting close to achieving a breakthrough in the level of his martial arts skills, when suddenly, with great and incomprehensible speed, Kibo waved his sword outward in a peculiar manner. Vegeta observed a strange essence gathering on the edge of his blades. The 6 Asura arms turned into blurs as hundreds of wounds on Vegeta's body appeared before the area around them abruptly exploded in a misty haze of blood. Vegeta grunted in pain as tried to heal himself. When he suddenly realized that the wounds on his body were still being cut into, he paled. "God-slaying art, lingering sword array," Kibo shouted as he continued to slash away at Vegeta. The foreign god's martial intent continued to attack Vegeta's body through his open wounds. Even after the blades had left his flesh, the intent of his attack remained. Vegeta raised his arms and shouted, causing a large spherical barrier of origin god Ki to cover his body and forced out Kibo's martial intent all at once. Kibo took this chance to stab Vegeta through the stomach with all 3 of his blades. His attack pierced the barrier and shot into the Saiyan King's flesh. Blood violently shot out of Vegeta's back as 3 holes opened up in his gut, spine and throat. The Saiyan King had no time to move before Kibo kicked him in the chin, sending him flying upward while the swords cleaved diagonal gashes from out of Vegeta's body. Vegeta flew back in immense pain as he felt Kibo's swords being ripped his swords from his body. Grunting in agony, Vegeta spat out a mouthful of blood and grabbed his wounds to stop the bleeding. Once again, Kibo's martial intent invaded his body and continued to cut away at his organs. Vegeta expelled the martial intent again and regenerated the damage before Kibo's sword came crashing down on the side of his neck. Shouting out loudly, Vegeta powered up even more as he started to block and punch Kibo's attacks by a narrow margin. As Vegeta passed through the threshold of Kibo's rage of attack again, the foreign god suddenly felt his stomach burn in pain. Vegeta's fist had punched a hole through his chest and broke his bones like they were brittle twigs. Blood sprayed from Kibo's mouth as he recoiled from the blow, being thrown miles away at incredible speeds. However, Kibo didn't back off. Instead of losing ground, he teleported back while raising his 3 blades. Oblivion and its copies slashed Vegeta down the center, across the chest, and chopped off the flesh around his knees at the same time. The two parted once again and quickly healed the damage. Vegeta threw his auto-heal and Kibo threw his gate of healing. Once more their auras grew wildly and more robust. Vegeta was ecstatic that he was having such a great fight. Constantly breaking through his limits didn't feel too bad either. Thanks to Kibo being such a strong opponent, his Zenkai boosts were helping him grow at an astronomical rate. Kibo was no slouch either. His power was still growing as he sensed the next stage of the superhuman god form was just a few steps away. Vegeta smiled as he placed his hands out. Fire, wind, earth, and water. A sphere combined with the 4 elements started to mix together over Vegeta's left hand. Lightning, ice, metal, gravity. In Vegeta's right hand, the sphere of origin god Ki condensed the 4 elements inside another sphere. Yin-yang explosion, Vegeta shouted as he slammed his hands together in the final flash stance. Kibo's eyes widened as he sensed the energy coming from Vegeta's attack, charging up to the point it began warping the fabric of reality around it. God-slaying art, chaos ender. Kibo shouted as he rose his hand up and created a giant sword beam. 12 elements gathered around him and fused into the sword beam as Kibo launched the slash out to fend off Vegeta's attack. The yin-yang explosion and chaos ender clashed. Rays of intense light rushed out alongside violent vibrations to the space around the attack. The two energies fought for dominance before Kibo created a dozen clones that joined him, empowering his technique dozens of times over. Vegeta's eyes widened as the blade beam crashed through his own attack and cut off his arm at the elbow. Vegeta then quickly grabbed his dismembered arm and reattached it. But before he could heal, he felt Kibo's sword at the base of his neck. "Now tell me, does this feel familiar?" Kibo questioned as he drew a line of blood. Vegeta smiled as the wound healed around the blade. While Kibo pushed the blade through his metallic skin, he noticed a thin stream of energy started to push back oblivion. Vegeta then grunted before he shouted, "It's not over yet." Kibo's jumped back quickly as he sensed a great threat coming from Vegeta. An explosion of power rose out from Vegeta's body and detonated like a million nuclear bombs. Kibo grunted as Vegeta's origin ki continued to grow rapidly. He looked to where Vegeta was and saw him standing still, but his senses told him that Vegeta wasn't really there. A painful sensation spread throughout Kibo's body as he felt his spine crack. Vegeta had appeared behind Kibo and landed a solid punch strong enough to crush an entire planet into dust. Kibo coughed up a mouthful of blood as his body flew forward while his gate of healing helped him rapidly recover from the damage. However, before Kibo could get a good look at him, Vegeta suddenly turned into a blur again. Kibo was surprised that Vegeta's afterimage contained all of his presence. It was as if he didn't move at all. By the time Kibo noticed it was a fake, the real Vegeta had punched him directly in the face again. Vegeta then sent out a combo of punches and kicks that caused Kibo to fly back, battered and bruised. His body was covered in abrasions, broken bones, and severe internal bleeding. His Asura avatar cracked, and his god equipment was on the verge of breaking too. Vegeta appeared before Kibo once more and hit him in the side. The Saiyan King's fist charged through Kibo's armor and beast god Asura avatar before crushing his lungs with the ribs he shattered. Kibo vomited up a large pool of blood as his body tumbled through the air. It was clear how much that one hurt. Yet Vegeta didn't stop his assault. Vegeta appeared in front of Kibo and kicked him in the stomach. The King of the Saiyan's foot tore another hole in Kibo's gut, while he used said foot to crush Kibo's liver. Before he could react, a fist came up and shattered Kibo's jaw before sending him flipping back through the air. Vegeta teleported behind Kibo and flew down, planting both of his feet into his back with a fierce stomping kick that almost tore Kibo in half. As Kibo was sent flying again, Vegeta appeared in front of him and landed his elbow on the center of his chest, acting like a pole pointing at a ramming car. Then Vegeta followed up with a punch to Kibo's face before grabbing his neck, kneeing him in the stomach. As he was flung above by the force of Vegeta's knee, the Saiyan King unleashed a fierce spin kick to Kibo's side. The blow was so intense that it forced the foreign god to hunch forward. Vegeta took full advantage and gripped his fist together before smashing Kibo's head like a hammer crushing a nail. Kibo's entire body felt like it was going to break into pieces. Blood leaked out of every wound, tears in his skin showed his regenerating organs, and his bones were almost ground into dust. However, Kibo hasn't used everything yet. He lifted his arms outward and suddenly shouted, "Almighty Domain!" The location around the two fighters was engulfed by a powerful space made from Kibo's will. The wounds on the shinobi god started to heal rapidly, and his strength began to soar. Vegeta found himself in the exact opposite condition. His movements had slowed as if he were walking through a marsh. His power began to dim as if it was being compressed or sealed away by his surroundings, and his healing was slowed to a snail's crawl. "What?" Vegeta's eyes widened as Kibo appeared in front of him. "In here, I am unbeatable." Kibo unleashed all his strength as he punched a hole through Vegeta's stomach. Vegeta flew back like a rotating bullet as Kibo appeared above him. Then, with a fierce stomp to the Saiyan King's back, Kibo shattered Vegeta's spine while crushing several of his organs. Vegeta cried out in pain as bounced off of the strange grounds of the domain. He punched at the wall around him, but nothing came of it. He was trapped in here. Kaiba smirked before continuing his assault. A swift kick to his chin forced the limp-bodied Saiyan to a standing position while shattering his bones like glass. Before Vegeta could regenerate the damage, Kiba appeared beside him and chopped out at his neck with a sword bathed in his intent. A loud clang was heard as Oblivion cut halfway through Vegeta's neck. Hot metallic blood splashed over Kibo's chest while his foe cried out in pain. Vegeta nearly passed out before powering up a one-handed blast and shooting it off in Kibo's direction. The blast phased through Kibo's after image, leaving the sword in his neck while Vegeta felt a few punches land on his jaw. The Saiyan King's brain rattled as Kibo jumped up and grabbed his sword around the blade and handle. While he pushed the blade deeper in, Kibo used his knee to kick the other side of Vegeta's face, smashing his neck in the sword's direction several times in rapid succession. The blade cut open Vegeta's neck and almost passed through his spinal cord. Thankfully, the Saiyan reacted by raising his arms and grabbing hold of the blade. However, the moment the blade was stopped by his metallic grip, Kibos released his hold on his weapon and fell to the ground while using his other two swords to cleave into Vegeta's waist. As the X-shaped wound appeared, Saiyan King cried out in pain while the blood shot out. Kibo then performed a front flip and smashed the top of Vegeta's skull with the bottom of his heel, before stabbing his other two swords into Vegeta's back. The Saiyan yelled out in anguish again, as the Oblivion copies barely missed his heart and lungs. Kibo then summoned an army of clones that started to brutally assault their target. Vegeta was punched, kicked, elbowed, kneed, cut, stabbed, beaten, and broken. Grabbing the swords out of his body, Kibo's main body tossed Vegeta through the air and began to cut, stab, and bash the Saiyan King around like a plaything. While Vegeta's power continued to diminish at a constant pace, Kibo continued to cut away at his foe. Vegeta's healing ability severely lowered to the point that not even the smallest Zenkai boost was enough to catch up with the power drain of this strange domain. On the other hand, Kibo's power was constantly growing without reason or rhyme. The foreign god continued to beat the living tar out of Vegeta until the Saiyan was forced to the brink of death. Vegeta's entire body was almost completely destroyed in every means of the word. His bones fractured like spiderwebs, muscles torn in multiple places, wounds covered every inch of his body, and his power mostly drained. Inside the almighty domain's enfeebling effect, Vegeta felt like he was sinking to the bottom of the ocean. Every movement, every thought, and breath cost far more energy than it ever should. When Saiyan's body lost all its energy, he suddenly felt a strange sensation spread throughout his body. His mind was in a haze, and he was completely relaxed. Without knowing it, Vegeta had entered a mysterious state of being. Surges of power began to erupt from the deepest corners of his soul. The Saiyan King then shouted as his hair started to glow radiant white. Vegeta's aura exploded out from his body like a galaxy being born. The energy radiating from him glittered like countless stars forming into a swirling cluster. For every second that passed, Vegeta's strength continued to grow at an exponential rate. A glorious explosion of energy rippled out of Vegeta as he discovered the complete form of Ultra Instinct. All of his latent potential sleeping within his body was brought to the surface. As his broken body quickly repaired itself, Vegeta sensed that all of his abilities, all of his power, broke through their limits thousands of times over. Kibo felt a sense of dread coming from Vegeta, but didn't seem too worried about it. No matter how much Vegeta powered up, it was useless as long as he fought in his almighty domain. Kibo waved his hands as the 12 elements surged towards Vegeta and once again sealed up his movements. Kibo rushed forward and punched out with everything he had, Fist of the Four Sacred Beasts. The images of Seryu, Genbu, Byako, and Suzaku all formed into a single golden fist that roared out with unimaginable energy. The punch slammed into Vegeta's stomach and sent waves of pain throughout the Saiyan King. Similar to a candle being blown out, Vegeta felt his newfound power vanish in a snap. His vision grew dark while his body began to feel weightless. Before the Saiyan King fell to the ground, Kibo held him up by his arm and said, "Good fight." Vegeta didn't hear it because he had lost consciousness. Kibo then took him back to his inner world's planet and healed Vegeta with a full recovery pill por Senzu bean combo. After looking over the Saiyan's condition, Kibo could see that it would take a while longer for Vegeta to regain consciousness. It wasn't that he was still wounded, but rather it was the complete opposite. Vegeta had absorbed some of the energy he produced in the complete Ultra Instinct form into his base form. So, in short, his body needed rest in order to adjust and compensate for the power of Ultra Instinct. Since Vegeta wasn't getting up anytime soon, Kibo decided to work on his forging skills by repairing Vegeta's armor and outfit with some valuable treasured materials. Kibo pulled out a strange anvil and forging hammer that glowed with a primordial essence. Next, leatherworking tools and sharp blades were set up beside Kibo in an orderly fashion. Okay, let's see what I can do with this. Kibo's eyes glowed as he striped Vegeta down to his flexible wetsuit-like undergarments and stared at the tattered clothing and armor. Interesting to think such mundane materials could hold up so long against me in combat. Is it made of magic particles? Kibo thought to himself, deeply interested in the structure of Vegeta's gear. Cool, Kibo shouted. It's actually made of a combination of both ki and mana. Piccolo's clothing beam is truly amazing. To recreate solids from an energy wave, fascinating. As he slammed his hammer down against Vegeta's clothing, a massive array of sigils started to break down the gear to their most basic components. Now let's make some godly armor for the Saiyan King. After all, I don't get to make the Vegeta equipment every day, so I should do my best. Kibo's eyes sparkled. He may appear to be generous, but he really just wanted to experiment with his forging skills. Vegeta just happened to be in the right place at the right time. Kibo started by remaking Vegeta's long jacket, which resembled the fusion outfit slightly. It didn't have any of the fluff around the neck. It was a proper foldable collar, and full size of it was around waist length, with two flaps that had a ring shape at the top end of them, most likely for his tail. By using the hide he gained from one of the black striped white tigers born in his inner world, the defensive properties of the jacket were magnified by godlike proportions. Not all of the god beast inside Kibo's inner world were tame. Some of them liked to rebel, break the laws he made, and had all-around terrible attitudes. Sometimes the four sacred beasts that served Kibo would kill their own kind if they got too rowdy or upset their master in some manner. There were even times where he had to stop his partners from going overboard. So they often presented the corpses of the rebels to Kibo as materials for forging. Kibo had plenty to spare. Making this for Vegeta was nothing for the death-eyed immortal. Kibo's swift hands turned into blurs as he quickly sewed in the materials with ease. It only took him a minute to seal in thousands of unique arrays into the surface of the fabric. Next, Kibo added in scales that Seryu had shed over time and worked them into his Saiyan armor. The armor glowed with an azure blue hue that shined like jade. As for the belt, Kibo remade it by using silk from a Golden World silkworm's cocoon, species that could make top-tier god items and was desired by many gods. It is rumored that if one wears a robe made from this silkworm, then they could survive the collapse of a star. The pants were rewoven using phoenix feathers as their base. You could bath in the sun's plasma, and these pants wouldn't so much as get singed. As for the boots, they were made mostly from skin shed by Xuanwu tortoises, snake-tail. Small pieces of the tortoiseshell layered the boots like armor and kept the original Saiyan style to their appearance. Kibo wiped the sweat from his forehead as he slammed his hammer down onto the arrays over the anvil. After dozens of minutes, the materials started to take the shape of Kibo's desire. When it neared completion, the equipment's power went beyond the allowed threshold and triggered its heavenly tribulations. Kibo's hammer banged across the surface of the uniform and forced the item's essence to break into god-tier territory. The fearsome lightning bolt tried to strike the items, but Kibo raised the hammer into the air and let the tribulation run through the bone-white hammerhead. He held the bolt in place and started to slam against the equipment once more. The tribulation grew more fierce before Kibo smiled and threw the items into the bolt. Using the tribulation lightning to quench the items, Vegeta's outfit was refined to the point of forming spirit embryos. If Vegeta ever attuned his spirit to the god-tier armor, they would form an item spirit like Kibo's. As the last bolt came crashing down and bathed the clothing in lightning, Vegeta started to wake up. Opening his eyes, Vegeta looked at the sky with a blank expression on his face before he spoke out with a surprised tone. "I lost." "Ha ha ha!" Vegeta started to laugh hysterically. He didn't feel bad about losing, rather he felt refreshed. "I lost. I actually lost." It had been so long since Vegeta suffered through the throes of real defeat. Other than Beerus, Whis and Goku, no one was able to match his might. Few might have tricks up his sleeve, but Vegeta could tell, when it came to sheer power, the Demon King was lagging somewhat behind him these days. With a smile on his face, Vegeta accepted his loss and gained a newfound respect for Kibo. Vegeta sat up as he saw Kibo putting the finishing touches on his outfit. The Saiyan King looked a little puzzled when he finally noticed that Kibo had stripped him down to the flexible black wetsuit that Saiyans normally wore under their armor. Vegeta then heard Kibo shout out, "Done," as he gathered up the items and looked over at him. "Here." Kibo tossed the outfit over to Vegeta. Vegeta caught it and felt intense energy rippling off of its surface. "What is this?" "I repaired and improved your outfit. Now they can self-heal as long as you pour your energy into it." Kibo pointed to the clothing. "I also made you a pair of gloves that can increase your strength by more than double," Kibo said, as he started to tell Vegeta of the changes to his gear. Vegeta was surprised when Kibo said, "Since you prefer gaining power by relying on your own effort, other than the gloves, the equipment only has defensive properties. At most, they will protect you from harm and keep you from ending up naked in the middle of battle." Vegeta put on the god-tier equipment set and smiled as he felt a comfortable and cooling sensation spread across his body. When he put on the gloves, Vegeta lightly punched out and sent a whirlwind of air pressure that ripped across the surface of Kibo's inner world. Not bad, Vegeta thought as he put the gloves away in his pocket space. Vegeta then turned to Kibo and thanked him by saying, "I'm grateful for the equipment, but don't think this is over. I'll challenge you to a rematch someday." Kibo laughed. "Until then, I think you should work on mastering Ultra Instinct." Vegeta rubbed the back of his head and said, "Easier said than done. It's like trying to catch a fly with a strand of hair." Vegeta then looked at his hand and gripped his fist, "But I'll never forget that sensation. I suppose I owe you now." Kibo laughed. "It doesn't matter much to me. I can duplicate items with a special trick of mine, so it really isn't like I'm wasting materials." Vegeta nodded his head and asked, "So how do I get out of here?" Kibo smiled before waving his hand. The space around them appeared to warp into a tunnel, and faster than one could snap, both Vegeta and Kibo returned to the earth in an instant. Kibo then swapped out his clothes and sat back down next to his fishing pole before saying, "Now to get back to my beer." Kibo eased into his lawn chair and picked up his fishing rod. But before he could relax, he heard an explosion coming from his new house. Kamehameha! Kibo proceeded to hear the sound of Goku shooting off a beam of energy that shot through his roof. When he used his senses to see what was happening, Kibo's eyebrows furrowed. "Those guys?" Vegeta started laughing as he sensed the same. Kibo flew over to his house to see Team 7 taking on a lone Goku. Naruto had just dogpiled Goku in a crowd of clones, to which Goku responded by blasting them all off with a full-powered Kamehameha. Kibo noticed that Goku and the group seemed to have come to an agreement. Goku only used his base form while Kibo's family and friends would do the same. Sasuke activated his Susanoo avatar and deflected the beam with the grass cutter sword. Sakura shot out Phoenix flames and used an earth god art to entrap Goku's feet. Goku was smiling as he powered up by using the Kaioken. He broke free of his restraints and rushed towards Naruto. Just as he was about to land a punch, he suddenly stopped. Karin had halted his movements with a sealing array while Naruto used a full-powered Rasengan to blast Goku into the ground. "Behind you!" Shion shouted, as Goku teleported to Naruto's back and put him in a headlock. Naruto disappeared in a puff of smoke, revealing that he was nothing more than a shadow clone. Goku then laughed as he raised his fist behind his shoulder and hit Naruto in the nose with the back of his hand. Naruto took a big hit. His nose bled as he fell to the ground while using his hands as a spring to bounce back up in an acrobatic manner. "You'll have to do better than that. I can't willfully sense your energy when you hide it, but if I surround myself in a thin bubble of ki, then I can still sense your approach," Goku said, as he was suddenly forced to dodge. Kakashi zipped past Goku's side with purple lightning coating his hand. A small rip on Goku's giz tore open along with a cut that was dripping blood. "But if we're fast enough, you won't have time to react," Kakashi said, as if he were teaching another student. Goku grinned and clenched his muscles, stopping the bleeding as he said, "My skin's tougher than it looks. Kaioken times 10. Goku appeared next to Kakashi and swung down his fist. When Goku hit Kakashi, he was surprised to find out that he had it a large log rather than his target. As Goku's fist shattered the log into splinters, Kakashi reappeared next to Goku and struck out at the same time as Hinata. Kakashi's lightning weakened Goku's defenses while Hinata's attack was focused on his tenketsu. Their attack slammed against Goku's body and sent him rolling back on the ground. Goku stood back up almost instantly. However, when he went to move, he found out that he couldn't control his ki properly. Naruto jumped on the Saiyan's moment of weakness and performed a series hand signs. Black inkish characters formed around Goku's ki center, halting his movements in a sealing array. Hinata joined in as she continued to seal away Goku's strength through the use of her gentle fist style. The moment she sealed his power, Hinata hit him with her clan's new hard fist style. As her attack landed, a huge burst of energy flowed through Goku, while all the energy sealed in his tenketsu exploded outward in a violent manner. It looked like Goku's body was about to self-destruct when he quickly transformed into a Super Saiyan. The flux of ki forced Goku to push the internal energy through his body's energy pathways. Using his ki-like water pressure to flush the foreign energy from his body, Goku managed to clean out all of Hinata's seals. The moment he transformed, the agreement was broken. The visiting group used their God-Beast mode transformations and jumped at Goku. In response to their sudden surge of energy, the Saiyan powered up 2 one-handed Kamehameha attacks. Just as they were about to unleash some fairly strong attacks, Kibo interrupted by shouting out, "Okay, that's enough. Stop wreaking our home, unless you want to sleep outside for the duration of our stay here." Everyone stopped and looked around with an embarrassed expression. Goku whistled with a nonchalant gesture, throwing his hands behind his head and walking away like he didn't do anything wrong. Kibo had never seen Kakashi turn so red. As a teacher, he shouldn't have caved into Goku's childish pleading. However, he was so innocent that Kakashi thought that he was being rude. Kakashi's wife giggled as he disappeared in a puff of smoke. "He ran," Sasuke sighed. "Sorry, Kibo." Sakura rubbed the back of her head with an apologetic smile. Kibo looked at the damage done to his house and facepalmed as he said, "Well, that was pointless." He turned to Goku, who appeared to be trying his best to sneak off, and shouted, "Goku!" Goku rubbed the back of his head and giggled, "Sorry about that. If you want to fight, go use the time chamber, your timeless training ground, or hell any place other than my house." Kibo reprimanded Goku. And you, Kibo turned to his family and friends. "I thought you knew better." Naruto scratched his head and laughed before saying, "Well, it's not like we can't fix it." Kaibo rolled his eyes before waving his hand. All of the broken areas in the surroundings began to repair themselves in a matter of seconds. It was like watching time rewinding. After everything was over and all the damage had been undone, Goku ran up to Kibo and said, "Hey, you guys are so strong. I'm impressed. You should compete in a martial arts tournament with us." Vegeta smiled. "That doesn't sound like such a bad idea. The next one is coming up in a while, and this time Kakarot and I will be participating." Kibo smiled and said, "I'll think about it." Goku placed his hands together and said, "Please." Kibo laughed before saying, "Fine. If we are still around by the time the tournament starts, I'll enter with my friends and family." After getting a promise from Kibo, Goku invited everyone to his house should they ever want to fight. Kibo thanked him for picking a better location and watched as Vegeta and Goku flew off. Vegeta then turned back to his family and friends before saying, "Since you all will be staying here for a while, feel free to explore this world. Oh, and if you need money, just ask my wife. You can probably trade some of your stuff for cash. She's especially interested in technology." Everyone took the Saiyan King's advice and began to settle into their vacation home. With Kibo's inner world and unique abilities, other than clothes to fit in with the people of this world, they didn't need much. If they found something that interested them, they would contact Vegeta or Bulma for the cash. Kiba even took a few thousand dinosaurs into his inner world for kicks. He wondered how they would mutate once they were exposed to the level of God essence flowing inside it. Kiba was surprised to see that the capsules could be placed in the spatial rings. Usually, compressed space can't be stored inside spatial rings, but the technological wonder seemed to ignore that rule. Bulma was overly excited at the idea of a spatial ring. She could save a ton of space and could carry thousands of capsules at once. The technology they traded interested her too. Nintech was still rather new in Kiba's world, but it allowed one to use energy from their very own bodies to operate it. Needless to say, Bulma was fascinated to no end. With the aid of her sister-in-law, Gure, the Tech Saiyan, the two spent days researching Kibo's technology. The two geniuses even managed to decipher and backwards engineer a few of his pills. They were determined to replicate the effects of Kiba's alchemy techniques using their modern technology. The brilliant scientists refused to believe that an age-old practice couldn't be improved through modern technology. Vegeta and Goku constantly showed up to challenge the group from the Naruto-verse, resulting in hundreds of battles over the course of 2 months. The kids grew to be close friends of Goku and Vegeta's offspring. They often went on adventures together and got stronger due to their interaction with one another. Kibo had spent most of his time relaxing and spending time with his family. It wasn't until Vegeta and Goku went to train with Whis that Kibo stopped enjoying his lazy life. He decided to join them because Kibo valued Whis' expertise and was a perfect trainer. It wasn't too hard to convince the angel either. All Kibo had to do was cook him something every day, and Whis instantly agreed to train him without high-stating. At first, Kibo was confident that he could handle anything Whis threw at him. However, the methods and brutal beatdowns he received proved him wrong. Whis was very good at pushing and forcing Kibo to his limits. It didn't even take the angelic trainer long to uncover the secrets of his internal laws. Vegeta and Goku also coached Kibo through achieving superhuman stage 4 and mastering his primordial physique. One day, while Whis was training the 3 warriors, he fitted them with weighted suits that were always way too heavy for them to move in, and watched as they struggled like worms crawling on the ground. The moment they managed to adapt and move, more weight was added on. It was hard work, but worth every painstaking second. While they were sparring with one another, Vegeta, Goku, and Kiba sensed a powerful presence arrive at the foot of Beerus' castle. Vegeta grinned and said, "He's here." Everyone looked over where the wave of destructive energy came from and saw Champa standing next to the angel known as Vedos. Vegeta, Goku, and Kiba all stood a few feet away from Whis as he clapped his hands together and said, "Sister, it's so good of you to drop by." Goku nearly fell over. "Sister, does that mean you're an angel too?" Looking at Champa, Goku then pointed his finger and said, "And wow, he looks just like Beerus. How rude to speak to a god in such a way." Vedos chided before introducing her god of destruction. "This is Lord Champa, Beerus' twin brother." "Wow, his twin, really?" Goku jumped up in excitement. "Choose your words carefully, mortal. You are speaking to the god of destruction for Universe 6, Vados mentioned as she straightened her back and smiled at the group. "Hey, which one of you is stronger?" Goku asked with stars in his eyes. "Obviously myself. I'm nothing like that lazy bag of bones, and I am far more handsome," Champa shouted as his belly fat jiggled. "Who are you calling lazy?" Beerus called out as he flew down from the entrance to his sleeping chambers. He was wearing a white nightgown with a simple sleeping cap. Yowing, Beerus looked at Champa's gut and chuckled, "I see you've gained weight again." Champa was about to call out Beerus's laziness when he saw him remove the nightgown. Beerus still looked skinny, and to the others it might not have been noticeable, but to Champa it was clear that his brother had been slightly in better shape than the last time he saw him. Not knowing that Beerus had some good training partners of late that could finally give him a decent workout, Champa quickly became jealous of his brother and shouted, "Who are you calling fat? You trying to pick a fight?" The two bumped noggins and looked like they were about to tear each other apart, when Whis and Vardas shared a laugh and said, these two never change." Goku was anticipating a huge fight between gods of destruction. He moved closer and clenched his fist in excitement as he focused his eyes on their movements. Champa threw his hand out as if he were punching. Goku's eyes suddenly widened as his expectations were let down, and he fell over on his head in a comedic manner. Instead of punching Beerus, Champa pulled out a boiled egg from a distant world. "This is the boiled dun-dun bird egg, my new secret weapon." Beerus smirked as Vidas explained why they were competing with food rather than their fists. "Wow, so that really happened? A battle between two gods of destruction almost destroyed our entire universe?" Goku's eyebrows shifted up in surprise. Only Vegeta and Kibo seemed calm, which surprised Vidas. Even more so when she sensed Kibo's unique power. "Oh, who's this?" Vidas pondered. Before Whis could answer, Beerus interrupted, letting out a loud laugh as he flicked his fingers and brought out a cup of ramen to appear in front of himself. Handing it over, Beerus grinned as he said, "All you need to do is use hot water and wait a few minutes." "Ha! The win is as good as mine," Champa declared as Beerus threw the whole egg in his mouth and chewed. "Not bad, but it's not over yet. Eat." Champa laughed as he ate the ramen along with Vados, only to quickly be silenced. Champa placed the cup of noodles down on the table after licking it clean. "It wasn't too bad." "Ha!" says the one who licked it down to the last drop of broth. Beerus teased. "Grr, where did you get this? What planet?" Champa hissed, "I obtained this treasure from a planet called Earth." Beerus so boldly declared before he began to brag. "In fact, Earth has millions of tasty things that are equal to or surpass the ramen cup you ate earlier." "Vados, we should have an Earth in our universe, right?" Champa shouted out. Vados looked into her staff and informed Champa that the humans perished in a foolish war, and that Earth was currently a desolate planet with no life at the moment. This was what Vegeta and Kibo were waiting for. Just like in the original canon, Champa brought up the Super Dragon Balls. Beerus then got mad for them invading their universe to steal them. "You sneaky bastard! How dare you steal from my universe?"
"I'm not stealing."
"The Dragon Balls don't belong to you. How about this, brother? I propose a challenge. The winner gets to use the wish in whatever way we want. So, are you interested?" Champa questioned with a devious expression. "I don't have to do anything, just stop poking around in my universe." Beerus rolled his eyes. "So you're scared?" Champa laughed. "That's not going to work, is it?" Goku asked. Vegeta sighed as Kibo chuckled and watched the two brothers butted heads. The two gods of destruction started to throw punches, making Goku's eyes sparkle. The pure-hearted Saiyan really wanted to see them fight all out. Vados and Whis, however, set Goku's expectations aflame and burned it to ash while they forced the two to stop their fighting. That's when Champa saw Goku, Vegeta, and Kibo all struggling to move in their weighted gear. I got it. How about these weaklings decide for us?" Champa declared as he pointed at the trio of warriors. "That could work," Vados commented while poking her jaw.
"How would we decide?"
Beerus questioned while crossing his arms with a confident expression. Goku suddenly jumped between them and said, "A tournament." "A tournament?" Champa and Beerus said at the same time. "You see, we have these things called martial arts tournaments back on my planet. We even have prizes for the winner." Goku then explained the general rules and that it was a trial through combat.
Champa smiled and jumped at the chance.
"Perfect. We'll pick the strongest fighters in our universes and have them battle it out for the wish." "Fine with me." Beerus tried his hardest to hold his laugh. Champa had no clue just how powerful his people were. And thus the Universal Tournament became an official event. Vegeta and the rest were told to put a team together and to find the last of the Super Dragon Balls. Vegeta then took them back to Earth and had Bulma hand over the Universal Dragon Ball radar. Using instant transmission, the Saiyan King left Earth with his party and went to capture the last of the planet-sized Dragon Balls. While Vegeta, Kibo, and Goku searched for the Dragon Balls, something momentous was occurring countless light-years away. Far away, near the middle of the Milky Way, on the massive homeworld belonging to the Frost Demons, a certain Demon King decided to pay a visit. Fu had appeared inside the chamber of the Frost Emperor and held his hand up before saying, "Heal!" The ice surrounding the Golden Frost Demon started to shatter and melt away. Fu, who had a devious grin on his face, suddenly had a change of expression. The Demon King went from cheerful to worry in a single second. The seal he had Majin Buu place on the Golden Frost Demon had worn down. Fu quickly used his own enslavement spell on the ancient Frost Demon in attempt to capture his new toy. However, the moment he did, Fu's eyebrows furrowed. Even in his weakened state, he's still able to resist my magic? Raising his hand, Fu prepared himself to reinforce the spell with all his might, when suddenly the Frost Demon opened his eyes and released a loud shout that shook the cosmos. The space surrounding Frost Demon's body began to warp like hot glass. The energy being released set out literal ripples in the air for millions of miles. Without warning, a dark and sinister devil chi escaped the Emperor's chamber, flooding the entire Frost Demon's planet in the process. Fu quickly escaped and kept looking at the situation through his phase spell. The Frost Demon stepped out and took a deep breath. 90,000 years this Lord Verglus has been sleeping for so long. Cracking his neck, Verglus released his senses outward and said, "I may not be able to harm you, but I can still sense you." Verglus pointed to Fu's current position and said, "Well, at least not in this form." Before Fu could say anything, Verglus transformed from a mostly golden and purple color to a mostly platinum and pink color. The ancient Frost Demon's energy rocked the entire Milky Way, and everyone in it, even those who were on Earth, could sense his power rising rapidly. Fu sensed danger and was getting ready to run when Verglus's finger lit up with a purplish platinum light. Before Fu could flee, a powerful and highly condensed beam of energy shot a hole through his shoulder. Fu cried out in pain as he vanished from the Frost Demon's senses. With the aid of a zoom spell, the Demon King managed to avoid death and return to Purgatory safely. He got away? I've never sensed magic like that before, Verglus said, as he flexed and gripped his fist. Powering down to his golden form, which appeared to be his base form, the Frost Demon cracked his neck and said, "Well, I am a bit rusty." Verglus then turned his eyes back to the planet and thought, "I need to return to Universe 6. Once I gather up all the Frost Demons from both universes, I'll launch my attack against the gods of destruction. Vengeance will be mine." With his goals set in motion, Verglus then began to take over the Frost Demon planet in a matter of hours. After gathering up all those who submitted and killing those who didn't, Verglus sat on the throne of Frost Demons while going over the history of the last 1,000 years or so. This Frieza was born with a power level of 100 million. Interesting, he would make a great general. Verglus put down the documents and turned to one of Frieza's old subordinates. "You." Sorbet shook as he was called upon. "Yes, my lord." "What happened to Frieza and his brother?" Verglus asked. One of Sorbet's men was about to spill the beans when Sorbet stopped him by slapping him in the back of the head. Sorbet then turned to Verglus and bowed before saying, "He's far away right now. If you give me some time, I will bring Lord Frieza back here in a few weeks. As for Cooler, he has been missing for many years now." Verglus let out a smile that chilled the hearts of everyone in the Emperor's chamber. "Good, bring him to me and I will reward you." Sorbet bowed several times and said, "Yes, yes, yes, my lord, I will leave at once." As Sorbet left, the foot soldier who was about to inform Verglus of Frieza's death looked at Sorbet and said, "Sir, how are we going to bring back Frieza? You know he is—" "Silence!" Sorbet yelled. Once he calmed his rage, he turned to his minion and said, "Select someone who has a power level close to the Earthlings. They will go to Earth and collect the Dragon Balls and make sure not to alert the Guardians of Earth." "Ah!" So that's how we'll bring back Frieza then. Will we be bringing back Lord Cooler as well? The subordinate asked. Cooler is Lord Frieza's competition. Of course, we won't be reviving him. Not to mention King Cold would probably kill him the moment he saw him. Sorbet shouted as they stepped into their spaceship. As the hatch for the ship was closing, he looked back at the Emperor's chambers and said, "With this, our position in Lord Verglas's army will be secured." Taking off into the stars, the group of Frieza's most loyal men traveled to Earth to invoke their resurrection plans. Meanwhile, on Earth, a certain blue-skinned imp was searching for those exact Dragon Balls alongside a black-haired little girl in an army outfit and a puppy of a dogman. "Sure, hurry up." Pilaf was clinging to Mai's back while she climbed up a hillside. "If we can get a hold of the Dragon Balls, we can fix our bodies." "Why can't we just steal the radar from Mistress Bulma's house?" Shu asked as he was panting. "We've tried that already. Those damn defenses keep getting in the way." Pilaf answered, "Besides, I still have my own locator. I admit it's nowhere as good as that woman's, but we already found 3 of them." Miss just finished climbing up the small cliffside and saw a large dinosaur nest. "Look!" Ma shouted as she pointed to the nest. "It's the 2-star ball," Pilaf cried out as he went over and picked it up. "Sir Pilaf!" Mai cried out as a large pterodactyl appeared and mistook Pilaf as one of its own. It then picked at Pilaf as if it were trying to clean him. Pilaf wanted to get away, but he knew his chances and decided to play along. Mai and Shu hid nearby, waiting for the pterodactyl to fall asleep. "Why does this feel familiar?" Shu said while scratching his head. "Didn't something like this happen before?" Mai asked, doing the same. It took 3 days for them to get Pilaf out of the nest, along with the Dragon Ball. Just as they were celebrating, an alien wearing the armor of the Frost Demons appeared holding none other than Bulma's Dragon Radar. A day earlier, 2 men snuck into Bulma's lab while she was dealing with her business on Salada. They barely managed to get through the security thanks to PTO technology and snatched the radar before running for the hills. Berna was contacted, and she sent her kids out to find the thieves. Unfortunately for the Zepti fighters, Frieza's men were given a new kind of technology to hide their energy from the Earthlings' senses. They couldn't fly or use Kai, but as long as they continued to hide their power, the 2 foot soldiers remained safe. Pilaf noticed their armors and quickly had Mai and Shu dump the Dragon Balls. As they hid behind a rock, they heard the foot soldiers speaking to one another. "Wow, we're lucky. 3 Dragon Balls are all in one location." The member of the Frieza force shouted. "Lord Pilaf, what are we gonna do?" Shu said, as he looked on at the Frieza force members. "I saw those guys during the invasion all those years ago. We should lay low and wait until they summon the dragon, and then we steal the wish," Pilaf announced. "That's the smartest thing you've ever said," Shu shouted. "Thank you, Shu. Wait a minute. Are you calling me dumb?" Pilaf shouted out and alerted the PTO. "Who's there?" one of the soldiers shouted. Pilaf quickly covered his mouth as his 2 loyal subordinates frowned at him. Shu seemed to have an idea as he stripped down and suddenly crawled out on all 4s. He then proceeded to do his best puppy dog act as he barked at the 2 aliens before rolling around on the ground and showing his belly. Mai froze and teared up with a sorrowful expression as she thought, "Shu, no, your dignity." "Heh? It's just a wild animal." The alien was getting ready to power up a ki blast. However, before he could fire it off, his partner grabbed his shoulder and said, "Stop, do you want to alert Earth's defense force?" Shu, who was sweating bullets, let out a sigh as he suddenly yelped and ran back under cover. "Come on, we only have 1 more to collect," the alien shouted as he picked his partner up by the scruff of his armor and yanked him along as they ran off into the distance. The Pilaf crew let out a sigh of relief as they quickly went into stealth mode and followed them to a distant location. They found the last Dragon Ball in a windy and jagged crevasse. After retrieving it, the PTO members went to meet with Sorbet. "Now we can finally bring back Lord Frieza." Sorbet laughed with a wicked grin as he ordered his men to put the Dragon Balls together